Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto had the chance to exist in the DC universe. Living a new life in another reality, Naruto now must handle a lot of complications of him interacting with various heroes, villains, and anti-heroes. How will things go with them interacting with a nobody? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 14, Secrets. The morning rays started to shine through the bedroom, as the light started to creep towards the loft's resident. The brightness of the sunrise had landed upon Selina's sleeping face, causing her to groan in discomfort from her well-rested sleep. She tried to seek comfort from her pillow to block out the rays of the sun, and it felt just right when turning her head a bit more into it. Selina had thought it was just a cruel dream when those moments from last night come to the forefront of her mind as she tried to go back to sleep. She wanted to stay in that dream and never wake up, but Isis had gotten into bed and started to wake her up with her normal morning kisses for her breakfast. "Grown, I'm getting up, Isis, just be patient please." She tried to move as per muscle memory when she felt her lower half really sore. Not only that, but when she tried to move her arm, it grazed against something warm and firm. This confused the thief in her morning haze that once she rubbed the grime out of her eyes, she looked upon the naked, sleeping form of her only male friend turned lover. She then realized what her pillow was exactly that made her realize what occurred. It can't be," she muttered as her eyes started to water up as a smile graced her beautiful face. It happened. It really happened. The sudden movements that were taking place started to stir Naruto from his slumber as he soon woke up to Selina looking up with him with unshed tears. "Selina?" he asked her in a concerned tone. "Are you all right? Did you have a bad dream?" She shook her head before responding back to him while wiping her barely shed tears. "I'm better than all right, and I didn't have bad dream. In fact, it was a good dream, a great dream." "What was it then?" "You telling me you love me." She slided up a bit on his form and gave him a pleasant kiss on the lips that made him wrap an arm around her to hold her closer. Her breasts pressing on his muscular chest with their hearts quickening their pace to sync up like one organ. The publisher then broke the kiss as his unused hand went up to her face and held it in comfort. "It wasn't a dream, Selina," Naruto said to her with a small smile on his face. "It really happened, and I'm glad for that." "Meow," Isis called out from the end of the bed. She then walked up towards the two while moving out of the way of the mess they made last night. Once the black cat came close, she started to lick Naruto's whiskered cheek and rubbed her head against it with a loud purr. "Hey Isis. Good morning," he said, petted her head a little before she kept licking said cheek. "Chuckles, cut it out girl. It tickles." "Really?" Selina smirked at hearing this, and out of curiosity, she brought her hand up against his cheek and started to rub it. "And no, Dee don't do the oh." He was cut off by her strokes on his cheek before she pulls her hand back with odd look and a little pinkish tint on her cheeks. "Did you just purr?" Selina asked in wonder, finding it a little cute. And no, I do oh." She kept on stroking his whiskered cheek and couldn't stop herself from laughing. "And no way. Laugh, I can't believe it. I don't purr at all," Naruto cried out as he lightly pushed her hand away. Of course, the moment he did, he felt a paw on his cheek and started to rub it. This caused him to purr once again with the rumbling sound coming from his throat and chest. "Ah, that's so cute," cooed the thief as she found the sight adorable. "Isis thinks you're a cat as well." "It's not cute at all," he said in denial with his red embarrassed face. "I thought I grew out of that years ago." It was, unfortunately for him and fortunate to others, something he was either born with or that was left behind for being Bunny Ear's container. He first came across this discovery back when he was a little boy. Naruto had just started to go to Ichiraku's and he didn't have any money with him at the time. Ayam had offered him a free bowl of ramen to him for a price of her petting his whiskered cheeks. It was out of mild curiosity for the young chef that she wanted to feel what they were like. He didn't mind at the time, since he was hungry. After devouring his meal in good manners, since Ayam smacked his head with a ladle on the head for bad table manners one time, she collected her payment. It felt really nice with her soft hands rubbing his cheeks, and with him in content with a full belly, came a surprise to them both. He purred. They thought it was just their imagination, and she repeated her action to get the results. When realizing that he indeed purred, she squealed in joy on how cute it was and kept doing it for a while, much to his growing dismay. So, every now and again, when he went by there, Ayam would hound him down to pet him and he would refuse. Even would offer a free bowl for the chance. It was hard to refuse on those times, and he had to suck it up on those moments. But since he never came to this world, he never purred at all and thought he grew out of it. Some people might end up asking, but wouldn't he purr when someone caressed his cheek or something similar? Well, caressing and petting are considered two different things. I'm not going into detail about them. So, moving on. After the little moment in bed, the two had gotten Isis breakfast out before retreating to the bathroom and freshen up. Practically spent an hour in there by cleaning themselves up, dirtying each other before cleaning each other again. By the time they got out of there, the newly made couple were pretty shiny. Well, Selena was extra shiny due to her satisfied glow. Once all that was done, the two were in the kitchen with Naruto cooking up breakfast for the two of them. While she wore a fresh pair of clothing for the day, Naruto had resorted to wear the clothes he wore last night. Not that he minded really, since those were entirely clean, but he'll probably change later. So how is this going to work out? Selena asked while sitting at the kitchen counter. On what exactly? With us being together. She said to bring up the subject from last night. Right. Well, Pam told me that I have one hell of a big heart. That's for sure. She quickly added as she remembered how the two ended up falling asleep after their continuation of last night's activities. His heartbeat was so strong and so relaxing that she was able to drift off to sleep easily. Add to the fact that Naruto turned out to be a very nice pillow with those ribs of his. And said that they can be fine of me being with others as long as I come back to them and show the other women the equal amount of love I have for Pam in general. Add to the fact that Ivy keeps saying that since I'm her king that I need to have consorts. That seems odd. I know, right? He said towards her agreement on that little statement. But I want to respect their wish and possibly see if this can work. Yeah. She didn't say much as she was starting to make plans on doing soon. One of them being her seeing Pam and ask on her opinion on all of this. Possibly might do that today while running errands from the bank and something else to kill her free time. But hey, it's okay. We've got all the time in the world. We can take things slow if we have to. The thief smiled at his happy-go-lucky attitude as he served her the starting meal of the day. He was right though about having all the time in the world. No one knows what the future holds, but one can be happy if they patiently work on things at a decent pace. Which is what the two plan on doing in their new relationship. Possibly should plan a date at one point since we're now a couple. Selena thought as she took a bite out of her delicate breakfast. Need to actually have that happen to show that we're now dating. The two had some small talks while they ate and nothing much occurred there. That was until Selena asked a simple question. So, was there anything else Pam said to you? Yeah, there was. Which would be? The thief said while dragging on the answer. She ended up taking a sip of her drink when he ended up answering. That apparently Harley has feelings for me as well. Q-spit, take what? Selena's response was pretty normal to say the least, given with the new shocking detail revealed to her. She had thought it was just her that fell in love with the publisher, but she didn't expect the asylum intern to have feelings as well. Are you sure that Pam's right on her? She questionably said to him. Not to offend her or anything, but it's pretty hard to tell with Harley during the few times I've hanged out with her. I was wondering the same thing actually. So, while I had to think things over on both you and Harley, I've been wondering how Pam noticed that with her doctor. The thief took some moments to think while chewing down her food before swallowing to respond to that. For some odd reason, this is making me think of an odd soap opera thing of the doctor going after her patient's girlfriend/boyfriend or the other way around. This got Naruto to think it over and came to the same realization. I guess you're right on that. Even though I had been coming in terms to my feelings towards you, I think she might not know she has any towards you at all. What you mean? After taking a sip out of her drink to clean out her palate before explaining to him. During the few times we hung out and during the moments being with the gal at Arkham, I could tell she has a secret. One that might have affected her deeply and could have buried any romantic feelings towards anybody. I don't know what it is exactly, but I've seen my fair share of variations to roughly guess that it deals with death on a loved one. I see. This could make a bit of sense now he thought about it. Sure, he knows that she has started to keep a neutral appearance at times while at work so she won't show that much of a reaction at all. Harley could have used that subconsciously when dealing with certain feelings and end up burying it down and not dwell into them. So, my little advice for you is this, just keep doing what you're doing and don't try to date her too quickly. Just take things slow and things might go well. Selena said before taking a bite out of her meal. I mean, swallow, you're opening her up from her shy attitude and trying to get familiar with her. So just keep doing that. I'll take what I can get, Selena, and thanks. You're welcome. The two ate in relative peace after that before finishing up their meals. They cleaned up the dishes and had to finish getting ready for the day before doing their own respective things. From Naruto heading to work and Selena doing her thing with her one dealer, the bank, and now seeing Pam because of recent events. Later, Arkham Asylum. Hello, I'm here to see Pamela Isley. The security guard then pulled out the patient's guest list and asked the usual question. Name? Selena Kyle. And may I see some identification? Of course. The environmentalist complied as she pulled out her wallet and handed the guard her driver's license. After a few moments, the guard of the asylum handed the item back to her before handing her the usual guest pass. From there, Selena navigated her way through the building and made her way to her destination. Though along the way, she came across Harley's office and this made her come to a stop. She wanted to see if her friend was in or not, like in her usual habit when she came on by alone the past several times. But after remembering what Naruto told her from what Pam told him, Selena hesitated in wanting to chat with her at the moment. I should probably tell her, she's my friend after all and should probably deserve to know. And then what? Have things get complicated between you 4 or 5, if you consider Pam counting as 2? Oh great, you again. Selena thought with a sigh escaping her mouth. I thought you went away when I got together with Naruto. It was only temporary, really. The inner Selena/Catwoman simply said. I am, after all, your inner instincts and subconsciousness. And I should tell you that telling Harley now instead of later will ruin the relationship in the group. So, what should I do then if I meet Harley next time? To simply put it, just be her friend and act like what you normally do with her. Selena could only sigh in defeat with her inner self winning. Okay, I'll keep this secret a little longer. Good girl. Now you have someone you had planned on seeing. The inner Selena said before the voice receded to the back of her mind. Right. She made her way to the women's wing of the asylum and was able to see Pam in their greenhouse-styled cell with them lying on the bed reading their copy of Loveless. Knock knock, hey Pam. Hope I'm not interrupting. The changed botanist looked up from the novel to see their fellow ally towards nature and gave her a smile. No. Not at all. So, what brings you here, Selena? Sigh, I wanted to come clean and tell you too. Tell us what? That me and Naruto made love last night. Selena finished off on what she wanted to say. She had somewhat expected Pam to go through a bit of a negative response of some kind. The only she got in return was a smirk upon the botanist's lips. "And how was it?" Pam replied as she got up from her cot and walked towards the glass barrier. Excuse me? How was the sex?" Pam replied with the ever-growing smirk at their friend's flustered face. "It's just a simple question, Selena." It was good." "Really? Just good?" both Pams respectively asked with a tilt to their head. "Wasn't it supposed to be great? Mind-blowing? Heavenly? Orgasmic? Okay, fine. It was amazing. It was perfect. It was the best sex I've had in my entire life. It was even, in fact, the greatest experience of my life up till now." "Happy?" Selena yelled out at the slight taunt with her realizing she was being joked around a little. "See?" they said to her with a smile. It wasn't that hard to answer. The eyes of the dark-haired beauty started to twitch before she pointedly accused the two of them. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" "Guilty." "So why do that?" "Because we were bored." The response seemed a tad familiar to the cat burglar as she said a similar thing to Naruto. Mind explaining, please?" "As you can tell, Selena, things aren't all that exciting being here." Pamela started off the explanation. "We do enjoy watering the plants around the asylum, interacting with our favorite Dr. Harley, along with our King's novel. But after a while, things tend to get boring and one needs to find entertainment in anything really." Ivy jotted into the conversation. "If you don't, you go mad." "Sounds perfect if you're in here," the environmentalist said before quickly replying back to them. "No offense." "None taken," they responded to their environmental ally. "I have a feeling there's something else you wanted to talk to us about. Aside from you and Naruto joining in our relationship." "That's actually what I'm here for, really. Why go through this with him and me as a supposed consort? And don't say because you're the queen of nature and all that stuff. Just please tell me so I can have more sense on this aside from your odd excuse." "Sigh, she does have a point, Ivy." "Might as well tell her." "Tell me what exactly?" "Selena, what we are about to tell you, you must promise us to not tell our king," Ivy said to the fellow environmentalist in a stern gaze. "If he finds out, we don't know if it will shatter him and unlove us." Selena looked at Pam and saw how serious the gaze was to realize that they are going to indeed gonna tell her something big. This made her wonder how bad of a secret this was going to be. But like any other person, there was one thing that came to mind in this situation. "What do you mean exactly?" Few days later, evening. It was a pleasant night in Gotham, to say the least, with the sky ever so clear from the clouds to reveal the lunar rays upon the city. With the cold light casted upon Gotham, it seemed to make the setting right for what crimes are being committed in the moonlight hours. Various ones would be committed, from robberies, murders, attempted rapes, you name it, and it could be happening at the very moment. Take for example in a random warehouse as the sounds of a man being electrocuted while writhing and screaming in pain. When coming closer to the source, we would see the man being strapped down to a chair with a contraption on his head with electrical sparks coming off of it, to reveal it being what's causing the pain and suffering for the man. Standing not too far away was the person that was doing this to the poor man. "That's a good boy, Joe," the person said with a small, sadistic smile. "Just a little longer." Once the electrocution torture ended, the man passed out from the pain as he fell down onto the ground with a mild thud. Soon a pair of feminine hands came out from the barely lit room to pull the device off of the man's head. She then brought it closer to her face to marvel the glint of the moonlight reflecting off of the reflective surface. "Shiny, shiny dot," the woman said with wonder in her gaze. With what bit of light that was shown in the room revealed her identified form. She has shoulder-length white hair and a bob cut with black makeup. makeup around her eyes and on her supple lips. She wore a black leather outfit with feathery wing-like ornaments on her shoulders. With the leather portion of the outfit though was unique, with it only consisting of arm-length gloves, mid-thigh-length boots, women's bloomers, a corset vest that uplifted her breasts and a fishnet material that covered the majority of her body aside from her midriff. She placed the device into the pouch she had strapped around her shoulder before something glinted in her peripheral vision. Taking a closer look, she saw it was an oddly shiny stapler with it labeled property of Miskatonic Psychiatric Hospital before she too placed it into her pouch. The woman then ran out of the room with her goal for the night already done. Before she could get any farther, she was kicked onto the side by surprise and seemed to fly a bit into the air. She quickly recovered and twisted herself upright to land onto several boxes up above. "Hey!" she yelled out to whoever assaulted her. "You just hit a girl." "No. I just hit a criminal," the woman's assailant calmly said to her. When he stepped closer, the person was then revealed to be Batman. "You know, you've given me quite the run," the Dark Knight said to her before coming to a complete stop. 6 warehouses and stolen technology that roughly estimate in the hundreds of thousands. "Really?" she curiously asked on the new information. "I've only liked them for how they sparkled, Mr. Batman. Magpie." As she introduced herself, she caught her eye on something on his person. "Oh, nice belt. Shiny shiny. Can I have it?" "Sorry, I'm using it right now." "How about a shiny pair of handcuffs instead?" he told her as he pulled out a pair of bat cuffs. Magpie narrowed her eyes a bit and jumped off of her placement to try and land a kick at the Gotham hero. He rolled onto the side to evade the blow when Magpie landed onto the ground. She stood up and wiped her hands onto her sides to have her nails elongate into sharp weapons before diving towards him for her assault. She swiped and kicked towards the hero as he tried to dodge and evade her quickened blows. He soon had to block the claws with the bracers on his arms before being kicked onto the side. When he recovered from the blow, Batman pulled out a few batarangs and threw them towards the bird-themed criminal, who knocked them away with her claw-like weapons. When she got closer, he pulled out the bat cuffs and quickly placed them on one of her wrists and attempted to put them on the other. Magpie got angry at this and spun around to kick him at the head. It was successful and he landed onto the ground with a mild thud. Not wanting to see him get back up, the white-haired woman ran towards the dark-themed hero before leaping towards him. He saw the attempt she was about to do and shot his feet out and kicked her belly into the air. It was good, at first, to get her away from him, but he momentarily forgot about the support pillar nearby as she landed her feet on it and used it as a springboard to launch herself back at the hero. Batman had to dodge yet again from her diving towards him, but this gave Magpie a clear path to a hanging rope that was behind him. She grabbed a hold of it and used it to swing around to land a powerful kick onto her assailant, which sent him straight to the support pillar that ended up knocking him out. With her opponent out of the way, she swung towards her parcel that was lying on the ground and would have caught it if it wasn't for someone else snagging it before her. "Sorry, pretty bird, but you need to do better than that," the person said to her as she let go of the rope and glared at him. "Who are you?" she questioned at the shadowy man. Moi. "All right, I'll tell you," he said as he stepped into the moonlight coming from the ceiling windows with the bag in hand. "The name's Vanitas. Got it memorized." She inspected his form before her eyes were then drawn towards his dark glass-like helmet. The moonlight gleamed off its surface and made it seem to glow and radiate in her eyes. When seeing this, her gaze then adopted a look of wonder and awe like before. "Shiny shiny dot. Shiny? What's shiny?" he asked as he then remembered his reflective helmet with the moon out tonight. "Never mind. I have to have it," Magpie demanded as she came towards him in a surprising amount of speed. She leapt off of the ground and wrapped her legs around his head and circled around him before throwing him off to the side. In the process, he dropped the parcel from his hands, making it free for Magpie to take it back. Once she landed onto the ground, she made her way towards her property before several daggers were thrown towards the bag to hold it in place. She glared at the black and white themed hero before attempting to hit him again with her claws this time. Vanitas moved out of the way before grabbing a hold of her arms and held her down. This unsettled greatly as she hissed towards him before swinging her leg up to kick him from below. This knocked him back a bit before she came onto his back and attempted to stab him with her claws. Magpie's attack was blocked, however, with his arm before she kept swiping at him several times. She grew tired of this and wrapped her legs around his neck to render him unconscious. He surprised her by phasing himself out of the hold and attempted to take her out. She got out of the way and in a last-ditch effort, she went towards the ground and sent her legs towards Vanitas to send him flying. It was a successful hit with him flying towards a large stack of boxes that toppled all over him. Knowing he'll come back up soon, she went towards her parcel again before escaping. She had to pull out the daggers that held it in place and place them into her bag before grabbing a hold of the rope and climbed her way towards her exit. By the time Vanitas got out of his toppled box holding, the bird-themed criminal was long gone. Damn, she took me by surprise back there. Vanitas muttered as he had to pop a few kinks out of his shoulder. Should have fought better against a female opponent. Then again, there is sparring against Selena, but she never done any of that in our fights. The masked publisher then heard Batman groan a bit as he tried to get up from his placement by the support pillar. He came up to the downed man and helped him up for support. You alright, Bats? I'll be fine. Batman told Vanitas as he held his head a bit. Where's Magpie? The bird girl? Well, she's long gone, Batsy. She's surprisingly agile though. I get that. The two then heard a groan from the other room before making their way over to see what happened. When getting there, the one man was hunched over in a fetal position with the ground around him seemingly scorched due to the electrocution torture on him. Placing his hand onto the man's shoulder, Batman spoke to the man. Are you okay? What's your name? I don't know. The man said as he looked around with uncertainty in his eyes. Who am I? Where am I? What happened? This ended up leaving more questions than answers for the two before Batman placed his hand towards his ear and called for the GCPD on their current placements. Once that was done, he turned towards Vanitas to only see empty space to indicate the man already left. Batman could only sigh yet again on not getting the chance to talk to the mysterious man as he pulled another one on him. Once the police arrived, he informed them on what happened before he left for the night to do his own investigation on the matter. Hours later, Naruto's loft. Sigh, glad that I don't have to go to the office today. He said to himself as he was sitting at his desk, going over various documents he brought home yesterday. Going over several revenues to see on what's up to date and if they seemed accurate or not. Looking over a few books that were waiting for approval before being sent to the editor. Going over various resumes of potential new employees for the Metropolis location and current ones who would be fine on transferring there. Naruto was glad these were the only ones he had to deal with for the day. Especially on what he had to deal with for the past several ones. It had been a few days since he and Selena had shared their very intimate moment together with them starting out their relationship. Both of them hope this can work since they truly care for each other after all the time the two had spent with one another. Things have been memorable in the early stages, it's going through a decent start and they were fine with it. While he was at work on that first day, he had gotten a call from Selena and asked if they should have dinner at either one of their places for just a dinner and whatever else they could do. He complied and told her to come by his place after he got off from work so he could cook dinner for just the two of them. The evening was pleasant and they decided to just cuddle up on the couch to watch a movie before falling asleep in each other's arms. The next evening was relatively the same, but this time it was at her place with her wanting to cook dinner and afterwards having an evening romp to burn off the food. It was very enjoyable for the two of them, but the morning after wasn't all that great. Flashback. Naruto was breathing in the morning air inside of Selena's bed and reached out to grab a hold of his second girlfriend, only to grab empty space. Wonder where she went. He thought as he looked around to rub out the grime out of his eyes. He looked around the room to see how oddly messed up it was with their clothes thrown about and wondering how certain articles got stuck on certain places. Like how the hell did his boxer shorts stay hanging on the wall without any hooks, or how her bra was swinging on the hanging fan away from the bed. He heard the door open and looked over to see Selena, wearing his button-up shirt that was too big for her, with 2 cups of hot coffee. Once again, she looked radiant in the morning after and had the pleasant smile on her face when she got closer to the bed. Hey. Made some morning coffee. Thanks. He told her as he grabbed his cup from her before they both took a sip out of them. Not too hot and not too cold, just right that they could just take more than just a sip. I was wondering, was last night a dream? Oh, it was definitely real. She said with a small, growing smirk. Then you were right, about everything. I had no idea. So, you liked it? Yeah. He immediately responded to her on the question. Even with the part where especially that part, yeah. She giggled on that bit as he brought his lips onto hers for a few moments before separating. You know. I don't have any plans for the day. The thief said as she unbuttoned the shirt a little. Really? Yeah. She replied with her biting her lower lip a little while unbuttoning a bit more. Well, since I'm my own boss, Naruto told her as he pulled part of the shirt off of her shoulder, I can probably call in sick for the day and no one can tell me otherwise. That would be nice having the day to ourselves. So, what would you like to do for the day? The publisher asked as he brushed his lips on her shoulder before biting slightly, much to her pleasure. We could cuddle up and read. She tried to muster as he nibbled onto a sweet spot between the shoulders and neck. We could just eat in. Naruto kept on nibbling and kissing along the trail before reaching her ear and whispered towards it before nibbling. Or, we can maybe spend the day doing nothing but work up a sweat before having fun in the bed. Why yeah, we can do that. Selena responded as she was breathing heavily and cursing herself on Naruto learning all of her sweat spots already. They were about to get frisky with one another until the door opened and slammed with a voice calling out. Selena! I'm home. Shizen called out to Signal, who came into the loft. Oh shit. Both of them cried out as they ended up falling off the bed. It wasn't long until both popped back up from the floor with wide-eyed looks, with both of them covering each other up with the blankets. Oh God. I thought you said she was still in Russia for another day. He whispered loudly to her as he tried to run around the room and snag his clothes. I thought so too, but I must have gotten the time wrong and she came back today. She responded back in the same tone while getting her clothes as well. Hey Selena? If you're here, can we talk about something? Shizen asked out loud into the loft. You need to hide. What? Hide. Are you serious? You need to hide in my closet, Naruto. She told him as she was pushing him towards the closet in her room. I am not hiding in your closet, Selena. Just hide. She whispered back just as she pushed him in and closed the door. By that time Shizen walked in. Oh hey. How was the flight? Selena asked her roommate as she tried to keep herself cool in the moment. It was alright, and before you ask, yes, Russia was fine as well. That's good. Was the response as the thief awkwardly nodded her head. What were you doing? Shizen skeptically said as she looked at her friend's behavior. Nothing really. Just got up and needed to make the bed. Naked. I was feeling rather hot last night and had to go stark nude. Selena said the excuse on the fly before her eyes caught sight of Naruto's boxers on the ground. She swore she saw him grab them, but he must have let go slightly out of his grasp when she pushed him into the closet. Okay. Anyways, I need to talk to you about a few things. That's fine, but can I at least change first? It would seem awkward if I was naked. Oh yeah, right. Shizen said as she quickly got out of the room before calling out from the other side of the door. I'll be by the kitchen counter when you're ready. Once Shizen was some distance away, Selena quickly went to her closet and opened it to see Naruto holding a certain piece of lingerie. I didn't know you had these, he said as he felt that material. Were you saving these for another occasion? What are you doing? Don't touch those. She responded back with her face starting to go red. Like I had no choice in the matter since you shoved me in here. I'm not talking about this now. So get out of my closet and get changed. But what if I don't want to get out of the closet? He said with a coy smile before she grabbed him by the ear and pulled him out. Ow, ow, ow. Don't start with me on that and just do as I say. She responded back as the jokes weren't going to work at the moment. Once things somewhat settled down, the two had to quickly change as fast as possible before Selena got out of her room first to distract Shizen long enough for Naruto to get out of the loft. It was somewhat easy with Shizen kept turning slightly and Naruto had to quickly hide without being spotted. Luckily for him, he used his sound manipulation around him to keep himself quiet so he wouldn't give out any noise before reaching the door and bolted. Flashback end. That both realized the harsh reality that they needed to keep their relationship a secret from Shizen. Sure, they could tell Shizen that they were in a relationship, but they didn't want to reveal it to her too soon. Just only when things seemed comfortable. So now both needed to try and fix their dating schedules around the roommate. Like for example, they decided to go out and properly eat at a nice restaurant last night. It was nice, simple, quiet and pleasant that nothing really went wrong at all. Selena did apologize in shoving him into the closet that morning since she practically acted on instinct, like a sophomore in high school. Her words, not his. It was just that the relationship was still new to her and she wanted to keep this between just the two of them, aside from Pam who was on the know, before they come out on the information. Aside from all that, things were relatively normal. But there were two things that somewhat bugged him the past few days. One was Selena acting like she had something to hide. She did have secrets just like everyone else and he respected that since he had his own for that matter. But from what he saw was that the secret she had seemed uncomfortable and she wanted to tell someone about it. Naruto would have pressed onto it but decided to let it be and let her tell him when the time comes. The second, however, was the fact that he ended up sleep-writing those intercourse moments he had with Selena. It infuriated him that he ended up doing this, again, and there was no way into stopping this at all. Seriously though. Is Jiraiya making him write these moments with both Selena and Pam and possibly any other person he does the deed with from beyond the grave? To make him want to write the continuations of his Ika works? Unknowns to him in the afterlife, Tsunade and Kushina were trying their very best in trying to maim and harm Jiraiya to the best of their abilities for what he has done to their precious Naruto. The deceased Toad Sage keeps denying that he is involved with that habit now, but the two women aren't buying it at all. They do not want Naruto to pick up on that trait from his godfather and will do whatever they can to make it not occur. Aside from all that, he went out on patrols after seeing Selena off at her loft when they got back from dinner. He wanted to get rid of a lot of energy he had on him and both had in mind of them having sex in his loft. But they didn't want to have Shizen seem suspicious on her staying over at the other person's place after a date and there was no way in hell they were gonna try and do it in their loft. So both held it off for the time being, but not after giving each other a kiss goodnight. Night. For the patrol that evening, Naruto had stopped a few muggings and a robbery. He thought it was considered a slow night since he didn't know the whole standard thing on what Batman would have done on these kinds of nights, or on a busy one for that matter. The publisher was going to call it a night until he heard some screaming when he passed by the warehouse district and went to investigate. What he came across was Batman getting knocked out by that magpie character and he needed to stop her and figure out what was going on. His attempt failed and she got away in the end. After helping Batman up, they came across the man from the other room with his memories gone apparently. While the Dark Knight wasn't looking, Naruto saw a box on the nearby table with Blackgate Prison labeled on it and saw a file placed on top of it. He would have looked into it then and there, but he didn't want to get questioned by Batman again. So he ended up grabbing the oddly placed file and phased himself through the floor to the basement level and waited till the coast was clear for him to head back home. Naruto realized that it probably wasn't the smartest idea at the moment to take evidence from the scene of the crime. But he wanted to try to start investigating on his own without relying on Kurama too much. He already got the notice from his former tenant before that he now had a favor limit that the hybrid will do for free, but will want to save those for a rainy day. Now regarding the file, he had looked into it and saw that it belonged to a man named Lunkhead. From what Naruto got from his files, he was a tall, bald man that was roughly 7 feet or so in height and had some pain tolerance and super strength of sorts as his meta abilities. But the downside was that he was dim-witted. Odd trade-off, he supposed, of all brawn and no brain sort of thing, along with the bit of excuse of being hit too much on the head. Would explain the large bump on his head though. After he was done with his workload for the day, he was going to search for Lunkhead and see what he knows aside from what was in the file dealing with him in an experiment in Blackgate with mind control. Wayne Industries, R&D Division. The elevator to the section of the building sounded off as the doors parted open to reveal Bruce Wayne with a case on hand before he walked out. Before coming here in the past, he always had to sneak in through his masked persona and take what he could get to supply his arsenal back in the Batcave. He had to do that the hard way since he didn't want to be caught stealing from his own company. The process was difficult but manageable. That all changed when his friend and CEO of his company, Lucius Fox, was attacked by Matt Hagen/Clayface. It made Mr. Fox start losing his trust in his longtime friend, and that point was dug even deeper when Naruto sternly lectured him. After thinking long and hard into this, Bruce decided he needed to bring Lucius into the fold and reveal to him that he was Batman. Suffice to say, Lucius was pretty shocked on the new information given to him. But after several moments thinking things over, it did make sense on all of the details that would have fitted things together. The CEO did ask why his friend was revealing such a big secret to him, and he explained his reasonings with the Clayface event and what Naruto told him when he was in GCPD for his charges. Not only that, but he also asked Lucius if he can have better access to the R&D division/Wayne Tech, since Lucius was the previous head of the division before being made into the CEO of the company. The man complied, but if Bruce wanted better access to that part of the company, then he'll need to bring the current head of that division and his daughter into the fold as well. It was only fair with Lucius not wanting them to be left out. The disguised hero hesitantly complied, but accepted it since they were pretty familiar with his alter ego. "So Mr. Wayne, how the new gadgets work out so far?" A female voice called out as soon as Bruce came near the person's field of vision. The person in question was an African-American woman in her late 20s with poofish black hair that wore a standard mechanic's uniform with the Wayne logo on the cap and shirt. She had a well-fit figure for her age, given the fact on what her previous occupation was with the heavy lifting and how hard she worked. "They worked out well so far, Marva," Bruce said to the woman before handing her the case with said gadgets. "Though I think they might need a bit of tweaking. Understandable with them still prototypes." The now identified Marva replied as she opened up the case to see what remains there were in there. "Most of them are still unstable and I'm trying to fix all them bugs. They work out well in the testing area, but they sometimes would work better to test in the field." "Definitely," she replied with a smirk. "Sometimes one would need to consider all of the variables that we don't have here." "True," her boss told her before looking around a little. "Do you know where your father is exactly?" Marva thought for a moment before shrugging her shoulders as she replied to him. "I'm guessing he might be by the garage again, sir." "Good to know. Hope the next batches turn out better." "Same here, and I know you've heard this several times already, but thanks again for taking us in." As she said that, she went back to doing her workload for the day as the billionaire walked off to find the woman's father, Earl Cooper. One might be wondering how this Marva and Earl Cooper, a daughter/father pair, know that Mr. Wayne is the legendary Batman. For that, we must got back by several years. Earl Cooper as a top-flight engineer for Global Motors till he predicted that their latest sports cars had serious safety defects. He protested it to the company board, but they refused to listen to him, so he decided to quit right on the spot. The executives were afraid that Earl will reveal to the press on what is going on, so they sent thugs to take care of the engineer. Batman intervened and saved Earl's life, but it didn't come without consequences. Before Global Motors closed down because of the scandal, they had blacklisted Mr. Cooper as a whistleblower and he wasn't able to find work in the auto industry afterwards even after 20 years in the business. The man was literally down to his last dime, no job, no supporting wife due to her dying some years prior. But Batman came in and saved his life yet again by offering the engineer the challenge of a lifetime: build him a new car. Earl was paid up front in cash to get things started, from paying off his mortgage and all of his bills from past ones till the next 6 months on just the design specs alone. After that, Earl was hired yet again by the vigilante to actually build the car and yet again paid half now, half when it was done. It fitted everything that Batman could ever dream with all of his needs and expectations, and both men were satisfied. Of course, after the vehicle was finished, Earl was still out of a job. So, Batman suggested Earl talk to Mr. Wayne and get an interview from him personally for a position there. Mr. Cooper protested in thinking the man wouldn't help him due to his blacklisting. But the Dark Knight told the man that Mr. Wayne had hired wrongfully blacklisted people before, along with down on their luck people, and there were no problems in the end. Earl was hired into the company, and later on in his new career, he was promoted to become the new head of the R&D division. Even Marva joined the company when she was old enough, and she enjoyed working at Wayne Tech alongside her father. When Bruce got closer to his destination, he heard the sounds of engines running with the gears grinding before hearing someone cuss out loud a few times as things settled. Bruce then saw a car leveled up as a man, who turned out to be Earl, working on the underbelly of one of the vehicles. The R&D head was an African-American male in his early 50s with him balding on the top of his head with the only remaining hair being on the sides. He had his mechanic's uniform he wore while working in the building as per habit over the years. Underneath the suit, he had a well-built form after years of heavy lifting and working hard throughout his life. "Seems I'll need to get that fixed up as well," Earl said to himself before spotting the new arrival. "Oh, Mr. Wayne, good to see you again. Having problems, Earl?" "Just some minor problems, that's all," Mr. Cooper said as he wiped his hands off with a spare rag. "So, what can I do you for, sir?" "I came on by to not only drop off the latest prototypes to your daughter, but I needed to access the systems." "I understand that, Mr. Wayne," Earl said as he threw the rag onto the sides before ushering his boss to follow him. "Right this way." On their way over, Bruce decided to ask a certain question he had while coming over here. "Don't mind me asking, Mr. Cooper, but how's the progress coming along on the new suit?" "The suit? Well, it's doing all right on designs, but it's going to take a while to properly figure out a proper way to blend things together to your specifications," the engineer turned division head said as he rubbed his chin in thought. "It's all right. You can take your time, just so you know," Bruce said as he didn't want his employee to feel rushed. "I know that, Mr. Wayne. Just wanted to make things as safe as possible for you. That's all." "Earl, if you or your daughter are uncomfortable, Mr. Wayne. I know what my daughter and I signed up for when Lucius brought us into this. The risks we are taking in helping you out. We are committed to help you out for as long as possible, and we won't take no for an answer. We take great pride in what we do," Earl said to the billionaire hero before he continued. "We weren't stupid when you came to us in previous times to fix up your car. With all the parts that needed replacing or fixing weren't cheap at all, and you paid up front when the repairs were done. We eventually realized who you were under that mask, so please do us a kindness and don't consider us as idiots." After hearing all of this, Bruce had let it all sink in and sighed deeply before giving the mechanic-turned-Wayne employee a subtle nod as he spoke. "Fair enough. The two then made it to their destination as Earl started typing into the keyboard to get into the better systems of the place. "So, Mr. Wayne, what do you need searching for anyways?" "I need to look for everything there is to know of a man named Joe Braxton and his connection to Blackgate," Bruce said as Earl typed things down onto the computer. "Okay." As Earl started typing away, he decided to tell his boss an obvious suggestion in his mind. "You know, Bruce, if you want, we can come on by your bat cave of yours and do a proper upgrade to your systems so that you can have better searches to whatever else you're doing. It would save you the trouble in coming here way too often." "I would like that very much, thank you." Don't thank me yet. Thank Marva when the job is done. She was more of the tech whiz than I ever will. Pretty much got it from her mother," the man said with pride in his voice with hints of sorrow. "Your wife must be very proud in what you two are doing." "Oh, we know, there's no doubt about that," the mechanic replied before the search was complete. Bingo! Bruce then looked onto the results on the screen to see what they were. Joe Braxton was a part of a research team at Blackgate Penitentiary, but it didn't say what they were researching in. Possibly the files were physical copies and not much were fully put on record. Might explain why Magpie was at the one warehouse, but for what reason? Aside from that, the only other person in the team is a woman named Bethany Ravencroft, and she currently has a practice here in Gotham. Thanks, Earl. This is all I need. Glad to be of service, Bruce. Hope you two have a good day. The billionaire said as he made his way towards the elevator to head back home and get ready for the stakeout this evening. Meanwhile, took a while, but I think I found you, Naruto said as he stood near an alleyway with Lunkhead's file on one hand and a grocery bag of candy in the other. He was currently dressed in one of his usual attires of a leather jacket and a button-up, but he also wore a hat to try and cover most of his features. Further down from the Uzumaki's position, he found the man he was looking for unloading packages from a freight company he was currently working for. He had to go to a few shady bars to find Lunkhead's location, but none worked well so far. He almost gave up on his search until he decided to go to the stack deck and ask Moxie if she knew the man he was looking for. She was very willing to help out on his search. All that she asked for in payment was hearing from his mouth on how far he and Selena had gone to in their relationship. Suffice to say, the bar owner was very happy to hear the thief had gotten laid and was in a relationship with the publisher. After getting his required information, Moxie had asked why he needed to know where the man was at. It took some pressuring from the barkeep to make him tell her that he was helping out the new hero in an investigation. It was complicated on the explanations, but in the end she bought it and suggested to him if Vanitas needs any information, she would be willing to help the man on information depending on what it is exactly. Glad that I possibly have a new informant that I can get in touch with, Naruto thought as he made his way to the large fellow. From what Naruto read from the man's files, he was easily startled, so he needed to be wary. Not only that, but he tends to willingly comply to various things if someone gives the man candy of any variety. So before attempting to confront the man, Naruto went to the nearest grocery store and bought several bags of candy just in case. As he got closer to the large man, his cellular phone started to go off to end up alerting Lunkhead that someone is behind him. Rah! Lunkhead yelled out as he swung a box towards the person behind him. Gah! Naruto cried out as he narrowly dodged the large package before hiding behind the dumpster. Who the hell is trying to call me? The publisher asked as he checked the caller ID. Oh, it's Selena. Hey Selena. Sorry if I have to cut this short, but I'll call you back. I promise, the silver-haired male said into his phone before ending the call. What's the big idea sneaking up on Lunkhead like that? The large man questioned in a broken speech. Naruto held up his hands with his items on hand before coming out of his hiding spot to address the man in front of him. Hey big guy. I don't mean any trouble at all. I just want to talk. I even brought candy. To authenticate this, Naruto tossed the grocery bag of candy towards Lunkhead, who caught it in his grasp and saw it was true once he opened it. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Naruto said as he got closer to the man who was unwrapping a piece of sweets. "Now reason why I'm here is that I have a few questions to ask you." "Which would gulp be?" the man said while digging into the first piece of candy. "I have a file on me about you while you were in Blackgate Penitentiary," the publisher stated as he waved the file a little. "It said that you were in an experiment dealing with mind control." "Aha!" Lunkhead simply said with a nod. "Wanted to help Lunkhead's brain. Didn't work. Sorry to hear about that." "Thanks," was the response as he opened up another candy wrapper. "Now just 2 more questions and I'll be out of your way." "Okay. First off, were there any other people in the experiment with you? Second, what was the person's name who did the experiment?" Lunkhead scratched his head a bit before nodding towards the man who gave him the bag of sweets. "With first, this one lady. She was nice to Lunkhead. She was in cage next to me. They took her away." "I'm sorry to hear that, and what was her name for the first question?" "Margaret Gulp Sorrow." "Good, and what about the second question? What was that gulp again?" "What was the person's name who did the experiment?" Something that dealt with bird," the man said as he tried to remember. Lunkhead's brain hurt. "Hey, take it easy, buddy. You don't have to rush." Suddenly a light bulb seemed to light up in his head and it made him feel happy to hear it. "Oh, I remember, I think, it was a blackbird." "A black bird?" Naruto said in thought. "Was it like a crow or a raven?" "That's it. Raven. Raven something. Thank you, Lunkhead. You've been a big help," the publisher said in kindness as he walked away from the man. He would have used his memory manipulation to make the guy forget he was there, but with how badly damaged his mind was, the former shinobi didn't want to hurt him any further. "You welcome," the man replied as he ate more candy before going back to his work. Evening. Perched on a ledge outside of the building Bethany Ravencroft currently performs her practice at, Batman was looking through a pair of goggles to view the office of his target for the evening. He was waiting for any clue whatsoever on what her connection with Magpie was, and nothing has turned up so far. All that he has seen for quite a while was Dr. Ravencroft sitting by her desk and going over various documents before calling it a night. Batman's concentration was suddenly broken when he heard some yelling from the street below and saw 2 kids tagging graffiti in an alley. Wanting to get the simple thing done, he pulled out a batarang and with precise aim, he threw it and it knocked the spray can out of the one punk's hand to end up scaring them off. When he returned his gaze back to the window, he saw Ravencroft heading out of her office. In his slight distraction, he didn't notice someone right behind him until it was too late. As a pair of his batcuffs came into his field of vision to make him turn around to see Magpie right behind him with a grin on her face. "Shiny, shiny dot." Once she said this, she punched Batman across the face with the batcuffs and made him fall onto the ground with a loud thud. The hero had to get back up from his place on the ground as he berated himself on not noticing the bird-themed criminal behind him. "You know, after we last met, I couldn't help but wonder, what makes a man wear a bat costume?" Magpie started to say as she gave him a curious smile. "Got something to hide? Who says this is a costume?" This made her hum pleasantly towards the response. "Oh, I like that." She jumped down from her placement above and started to walk towards the dark night with a sway to her hips. "You and I should be friends. We have so much in common." Once Magpie got close enough, she started to lean closer to the hero of Gotham with the intent of kissing his lips. All that she got in return was a shove away from him that made her glare at him a little. "Not gonna happen." "What's the matter, Batman?" the white-haired woman asked. "Too much bird for you to handle?" I believe he already has too much to handle from other matters in his life to deal with women. A voice called out from nearby to reveal Vanitas landing onto the rooftop with his grappling scarf going up in smoke.
Oh, and how would you know? Lucky guess, I think.
Vanitas replied with a shrug.
Too bad.
I wouldn't have minded to get my talons on your shiny belt of yours,
Magpie said to the bat before directing her attention to the other man on the rooftop.
Or that shiny helmet of yours. I would have settled a bit with those daggers I kept, but they went up in smoke. On the last bit, she sent him a glare that made him chuckle a little.
Yeah. They tend to do that if they stay away from me too long.
So, no shiny daggers for you, birdie. Without any warning, she kicked the bat away as she tried to focus her attention on the black and white themed man to swipe her claws on him. Vanitas had to dodge her clawed swipes as she kept on to the assault before Batman came to land a strike on her. She was too agile for either man to land a blow on her as she kept maneuvering away from either of them.
Don't tell me that she's becoming too unpredictable for me,
Naruto thought as he tried to evade and get a decent hit on her.
That title is supposed to mean Databeo.
Naruto kept on his dodging until he realized what he just thought.
Wait. Did I just think Databeo? I thought I got rid of that verbal tic unless it's now a mental one.
His thoughts ended up betraying him as he got himself distracted enough for Magpie to kick him off of the ledge of the building after she did the same towards the bat.
Goodbye, my little bat and shiny man,
the bird-themed woman said as she skipped across the rooftop. If she would have looked down from the ledge, she would have seen the two heroes grabbing a hold of the building.
So, how's it Hanjin? Asked the helmeted hero.
All that he got in return was a blank stare before Batman pulled himself up.
What? I'm just trying to be punny here.
The two got back up to the rooftop through their means of travel, from grappling gun and scarf respectively, and dashed towards Magpie's current placement. Once they got close, both men had her surrounded from standing on either side of her.
Why did you wipe away Joe Braxton's mind?
Batman asked as he walked towards her with Vanitas doing the same.
The bastard stole something from me and he had it. Which would be what exactly? She looked back at Vanitas and gave him a smirk. Catch me and maybe I'll tell you.
She ran and slipped underneath Vanitas' legs before taking a leap off of the building. This made the two men go after her as they raced across the rooftops to hopefully capture her. As this was going on, she kept on laughing the entire time like it was one big game for her to play.
I wonder if either of you can fly, Magpie yelled out as she started to get closer to a building without another one nearby. Don't tell me what I think she's doing.
Vanitas growled out as he threw his arm out to get his scarf to latch onto her as she leapt off of the building. With the sudden pull from her legs, she ended up pulled back to leave her dangling hundreds of feet above the ground.
A little help here,
Naruto said as he used his other arm to keep the cloth in his grasp.
Batman complied with the other's request and tried to pull Magpie up.
No one, and I mean no one, will cage this bird ever again, she growled out as she swiped her clawed hands at the cloth a few times till the fabric finally ripped and plummeted her to the ground below.
No!
Vanitas yelled out in shock till he ended up hearing her body impact onto a car with a loud crash. She killed herself instead of being captured. The dark hero narrowed his eyes on the sight before saying something to the other man with him.
I don't think so. What do you mean? Keep looking.
The disguised Uzumaki did just that to see Magpie's body start to twitch fanatically before she lifted herself off from the wrecked vehicle. Once on stable ground, she moved her body a bit to pop several joints back into place before looking up and waved at them. After that, she ran to get the two men to lose track of her.
What the fuck? Naruto spoke out on the sight. Caged again? Now why does that sound familiar?
The disguised Uzumaki asked out loud, on to which the disguised Wayne picked up on.
You know something, don't you? And what if I did?
Then tell me, or I'll get it out of you one way or another.
Sheesh, you don't have to sound too angst all the time, you know. Naruto said as he waved the guy off a bit. Then mind telling me what you know.
Fine, the disguised publisher said before getting into a serious posture.
From what I had gathered, Magpie used to be an inmate at Blackgate. There's more to that, isn't there? Quite. Magpie's real name is Margaret Sorrow, and it's all I know about this situation so far. Good to know. Batman said as he pulled out his grappling gun and fired at some random direction. Thanks for the tip. Anytime, Batsy.
Vanitas said as he got back into his joyful tone before jumping off of the ledge and summoned his grappling scarf to swing away.
Then I'll need to figure out who this Margaret Sorrow is then.
Batman said as he pressed the button on his gun to get zoomed towards the end of the line before gliding into the night sky.
Saved me the trouble of searching for a name. Next day.
From what Bruce was able to gather from the Bat computer and the GCPD databanks, Margaret Sorrow was a kleptomaniac that was sentenced to 10 years for her repeat offenses. The odd thing that Bruce was able to find out was that Miss Sorrow only served 2 of those years before she disappeared. And that was roughly 5 years ago. With him hitting a roadblock, he decided that he needed to possibly gather enough intel from the source, Dr. Ravencroft herself. He could possibly be able to find any clues to Magpie's whereabouts and the reason why she targeted Joe Braxton. He did know that the doctor took something from her, but what exactly it was he didn't know. For now, he had to improvise and be sure this all plays out well in the end of this meeting he had scheduled yesterday. Mr. Wayne, I just want to tell you how big of an honor it is to meet you.
I admire all of the good your company does. The receptionist happily said as she led Bruce to Dr. Ravencroft's office.
She was a shorter woman that appeared to be in her 20s with short-cropped, dark brown hair. She had innocent gray eyes that seemed to fit with her sharply features. She wore a black sleeveless shirt and a beige, knee-length skirt to maintain her appearance as Ravencroft's receptionist.
Thank you very much, Cassie. The name's Cassie.
She's been fluttering about it all day. A voice said when the door opened up to reveal the good doctor. After all, we hardly get any celebrities over here. Dr. Bethany Ravencroft appeared to be a woman in her mid-30s with her shoulder-length pale, blonde hair that framed her face with her supple lips. She had dark gray eyes hidden behind a pair of thin-rimmed glasses. She also wore a light blue button-up shirt with a light gray knee-length skirt that showed off her long legs. Once entering the room, his eyes scanned every detail that he could gather to figure out more about the good doctor than she appeared to be. From her diploma hanging on the wall, a photo of her colleagues with Joe Braxton in it and several other items to pick up small forms of information.
So tell me. Out of all of the therapists available in Gotham, why me? Wanted to find someone out of the public eye is all.
Bruce said with a slight chuckle. With all of the tabloids out there, don't want to ruin the company image with going to well-known ones.
Fair enough.
She responded as she took no offense to that bit of detail. It was quite common with some well-known therapists these days to not really hold on to their doctor/patient confidentiality and just sell the information from sessions to newspapers to get some entertainment out of it.
As Bruce kept scanning the room until getting to some paintings on the wall. Didn't realize you would have these. The therapist looked towards the billionaire's direction to see what he was referring. You mean my inkblot/Rorschach tests? More of a curiosity, really. Everyone would have their own interpretation on what they see.
He nodded at this before his eyes drifted to a particular inkblot that made his mind flash to his parents dying on Crime Alley in front of him. He had to take a subtle breath to hold down that particular memory until he looked towards the next one that looked like a bat.
See anything interesting? Nope, not really.
He said to diffuse his trains of thought. His eyes then caught onto something on the nearby table and couldn't help but comment on it.
Still playing with dolls, Doctor?
She came up to him to see what he commented on to see what he had in his hand. It was a black and white doll with a circular headdress with feathers coming off from the bottom.
That's a Malaysian dream warden. Some cultures believe that she can protect you from bad dreams. He didn't say anything as he kept staring onto the object as he looked at the various details. Would you like to have one, Mr. Wayne? To help ease your dreams? No. Not at all,
was his response as he placed the doll back into its placement. She then ushered him to the patient's chair to get the session started. As he made his way there, he pressed a certain button on his watch to get his plan further into motion.
Meanwhile, wonder if she's in right now, Naruto thought as he exited out of the elevator of the building to the designated floor.
After what Lunk had told him yesterday, Naruto had to go back to his loft and do some research online to find out what the former inmate told him. He had a guess that he wasn't going to find out who Margaret Sorrow is with a lot of details possibly locked up somewhere, so no use trying to go through that route. So the publisher decided to look up people with the name Raven in their names, to see if there were any connections at all. There was a surprising large amount of people with Raven in the name. But after filtering everything down to the best of his knowledge, he was able to find the Raven he was looking for, Dr. Bethany Ravencroft. It even helped out that the woman resided here in Gotham and used to work for Blackgate before opening up her private practice. He had looked up her contact information, along with the address and office number, so that he can show up there, unannounced, and play off as a man that came on by to window shop, looking to see if he would be comfortable into having Ravencroft as his doctor or not. Though in reality, he wanted to see if there were any available sessions opened any time soon so he can inspect her office when she was there. If not, then he'll need to break in during the after hours. Well, here it is, he thought as he found the door to her practice. Once opening up, he was greeted with the sound of a door chime indicated with the bell attached to the top of the door along with the sight of a brown-haired receptionist taking care of a few documents. "Oh, hello there," the woman said in a chipper tone as she looked up to see him at the doorway. "Hello to you too," greeted the silver-haired publisher as he came towards the desk. "I was wondering if Dr. Ravencroft is in today. She's actually having a session right now in the other room." "Good to know, Cassie," she said while holding out her hand towards him. "Naruto," he responded in kind. "Pretty name for a pretty girl." "Giggle thanks," Cassie said as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're welcome. Don't mind me asking, but why have you come here personally instead of calling to set up an appointment?" "For one, I was in the neighborhood while running errands and I wanted to see what is so great about this doctor out of the various other ones in the city. Been wanting to get myself checked out with me having some problems as of late." "I see. Well, Miss Ravencroft takes her profession seriously and does her best to dwell into her clients to help understand them better," the receptionist said to the publisher. "I can understand that, given the reputation she currently has. So, are you wanting to set up an appointment with her?" "Possibly. When's the next available one?" When hearing this, she pulled out the planner and flipped through several pages until coming to an empty slot. "About a few weeks from now." "I see," Naruto said while mentally sighing. "Seems he might as well break in tonight to find some clues. Then I'll call sometime later if I want to properly set one up instead of on the fly." She would have said something of a response, but her desk phone started to go off. "Sorry." "No worries, you got a job to do." Picking up the phone, she answered. "Hello, Dr. Bethany Ravencroft's office. I'm sorry, but mind repeating that to me again?" In the next few moments, Naruto saw Cassie's face seem to adopted an alarmed look as she tried to compose herself and put the caller on hold and dashed towards the office while in session. "Cassie. What have I told?" a woman said in the other room with a raised voice, before composing herself. "You know I'm with Mr. Wayne right now." "Bruce is here?" Naruto thought with mild interest. Didn't know he would want to see a shrink.
I know, but...
Cassie said before she lowered the tone of her voice that made Naruto guess the receptionist was whispering something into the doctor's ear.
I think I should get going. Whatever came up in that call seemed urgent or something, and I don't want to interrupt. The publisher thought as he exited the office. With the thoughts of therapists on the mind, Harley ended up at the forefront of his thoughts. Naruto hasn't seen her since he dropped off her copy of the first edition copy of Loveless, and even with that last phone call with her. He tried to see her when he was at the asylum on his last visit, but she was out sick that day. Might as well check if she's better. Arkham Asylum.
Grown getting out of that stomach flu was a total pain in my butt, Harley said as she was drinking another water bottle in her office. This was the 5th one since she's gotten to work today. Last time I ever eat sushi from that place. It's been a little over a week since she had finished up Pam's evaluation report along with gaining her copy of Loveless directly from Naruto. To her, it was a successful day of completing a strenuous assignment and having a nice reward in the end with a new book. To celebrate on accomplishing her task, the intern decided to treat herself to sushi from this one restaurant she usually went to while reading some of her new book there. It did go well that night of finishing up several chapters, but the morning after was not that great to waking up feeling like she was going to die. She already knew what she had because of a previous experience several years back, and it was not fun at all. Luckily for her, it was her day off, so she had to call work and let them know that she might not be able to come in for the next few days with what she got. They told her to come back in when she was in better condition, but they'll have some assignments for her when she gets back. So, during the whole time she was stuck in her apartment, she did nothing but rest, eat, drink plenty of liquids, watch TV and movies along with reading the rest of her new book. It was odd for her to admit, but she was glad to be sick for those days. Being able to read the entire book from start, had to start over due to losing her placement on one uneventful moment to finish, and it was a very excitable read. She hardly let the novel out her grasps, besides from having to empty her stomach a few times, since she felt like a little kid watching an epic saga unfold in front of her eyes and didn't want to stop the excitement. It felt so great that it made her read it again and again. During one of the run-throughs, she thought she heard Naruto tell this story to her while reading its contents. Might have been the sickness hitting affecting her head, but she was hearing his voice while reading its pages. But for some reason, she didn't mind it at all, and it made her feel happier. Even to the point that she started to imagine herself being one of the characters that was being romanced with another, that took on Naruto's appearance. Ugh, why would I even try to think of that now? She mumbled as she uncapped a bottle of aspirin to get a few pills before washing it down for her headache. Knock knock. It's opened. Harley said, getting the person to open up the door to reveal one of Harley's supervisors, Dr. Serrano. She is a woman of Hispanic descent in her early 40s with her shoulder-length dark hair with them curling up on the ends. Even has signs of stress on her features as she constantly works on a day-to-day basis and hardly has any time off for herself. The doctor was currently wearing a cream-colored sweater underneath her lab coat with a pair of women's business pants and shoes. Hello, Ms. Quinzel. The Arkham doctor in a blank tone. Feeling better, I hope. Yes, I am, ma'am. Just getting out of it at the moment. Good. She stated before going out for a quick moment before coming back in to drop a stack of files onto the intern's desk. Then I hope you do well to take care of these. I'll do what I can, doctor. The intern said as the doctor left the room. Sighed, this is going to fun. Knock knock. Did you forget to give me something else, Dr. Serrano? Harley asked out loud before taking another swig out of her water bottle. Who's Dr. Serrano? Hearing the familiar voice from the door made Harley choke a bit with the water before she coughed to expel the liquid trying to enter the wrong pipe. Cough cough, Naruto. Don't do that. Sorry, Harley. He apologetically said as he entered the office. Didn't know what you were currently doing. It's all right. The intern said as she grabbed a handkerchief to wipe away the water from her mouth and anywhere else the water landed.
Are you feeling better, Harley?
I tried to call you several times, but you didn't answer.
I am just getting out of my flu now,
Harley said before waving him off a bit.
Also sorry on not responding.
I've drifted in and out while in bed and on my couch, so I couldn't have answered it those times.
Don't mind me asking, but who was Dr. Serrano? He asked in mild curiosity. Was it that woman that was walking away from your office like she had a stick up her butt?
When hearing that, the blonde intern couldn't help but snort at this and gave out a laugh that made Naruto think it was cute.
Yeah, that was her.
So, what was her problem?
Shouldn't she try to act better towards you? Sigh, she should, but not entirely, I think.
It's probably because of me snagging Pam off of her hands on my first day that made the ending evaluations turned out really great. That doesn't really explain why she has so much beef on you. She's pretty much like that towards most of the staff on being hard on them. Some of the higher-ups just ignore it with the train of thought being, well, she'll just push them to be better doctors.
Or something.
She replied with a mocking tone in the end. It's more so with her reputation.
How so?
She tends to target hard cases so she can feel satisfied in the end. Especially with it looking good on her record. Harley said before taking a swig of her drink. From what I have learned with some of the other workers here is that Serrano wants to have a better position here, like in the board or something, so she can have a lesser workload. After her little explanation, Naruto was scratching his head to process what Harley I think I get it.
So, aside from that, doctor, how'd the evaluation report go in the results?
Feeling better on the change of subject, she answered with a smile on her face. It turned out better than I expected. The board were very pleased with it and have given me permission to take on a few other patients now. When hearing that, Naruto gave her one of his infectious bright smiles as he spoke.
That's great, Harley. We should go out to celebrate this. My treat.
Thanks for the offer, Naruto, but I don't know when I'll be available.
She responded with an apologetic tone. With getting new patients to take sessions with, it'll start to fill up the majority of my coming weeks. It's completely fine, Harley, and this is good for you to be on the next step of your internship. We can celebrate when you have the next day off if you want to. I'd like that. So, until then, I wish you the best of luck on your coming trials.
The publisher told her as he gave out a sigh in remembrance of his times as an intern.
I sure as hell needed it when I worked for the planet. I'd bet.
The intern responded back with a small smirk on her face before looking at the stack of files that made it droop into a frown. Now if you'll excuse me, but I got some work to do here.
That's fine. I'll leave it to you then,
he said as he headed towards the door to her office while she opened up the first file. I hope your chat with Pam goes well like the other times. This made him stop for a moment and look back towards her.
Actually, I didn't come to visit her today.
Harley then looked up from the file with mild curiosity on his statement.
Then who? There's no one else on file that I'm aware of you visiting anyone else.
Naruto chuckled a little as he scratched the back of his head before responding.
Actually, I came on by to see you. Just you.
She felt happy on just hearing this. Even to the point of her blushing a little and had to try to hide her features from behind the file. He thought it was rather cute on her reaction to him saying that to her.
Well, got to get going now. Have a good one, Harley.
Once the publisher left the room, Harley placed the file back onto the desk and looked back towards the door where her friend was last at.
Really? He came on by just to see me?
Her question was left unanswered as she tried to get her mind back onto her workload for the day.
Keyword being tried.
For the rest of the workday, her mind would keep drifting off as her silver-haired friend would keep plaguing her thoughts.
Evening, Miskatonic Psychiatric Hospital.
The sounds of the Batmobile roared as it sped towards an abandoned part of the city before it slowly came to a stop.
This is the place. Batman thought as he got out of the vehicle and made his way into the abandoned building. The hospital used to be a joint operation with Blackgate Penitentiary for several years, so the prison would go up against Arkham in the mental medical field. It didn't last that long apparently, with Arkham being the more well-known and popular institution in Gotham and the surrounding areas. So, it has just been sitting there, collecting dust, and having the occasional thug or punk come across the place and spray paint various areas. Bruce was able to find out the place when he was searching through Ravencroft's desk after he had gotten Alfred to call the office to distract the good doctor. He was able to find a few items of interest in one of the drawers, a key with an A inscribed on it, a wristwatch, and a stapler with the hospital's name on it. When he had placed his eyes on the watch, he remembered seeing Braxton have a pale spot on his wrist that matched the outline of the watch from the drawer. This gave the detective the guess that Ravencroft is indeed associated with Magpie or, at the very least, being framed by the bird-themed woman. As he ventured further into the building, the Dark Knight missed the darkened form watching his every move. It took some time to explore some sections of the building until he came to a dead end. He was going to go back and search again for anything he might have missed when he heard something from up above. Batman was glad that he caught on to the sound, as he had to move out of the way from Magpie's downward assault. When she got back up from her fall, the criminal threw several punches at the hero before he caught both of her wrists. She twisted herself around to free herself while using that momentum to kick the man across the head. It missed its target as the man ducked before kicking the woman to the far side of the room, where some medical equipment were stored. Seeing the objects beside her, Magpie threw each of them at her opponent in hopes of distracting him. It was more of a nuisance as Batman blocked and dodged each of them with ease before punching her to the ground. She recovered quickly by placing her hands onto the floor to steady herself as she kicked the Dark Knight from below before wrapping her legs around his neck to toss him to the side. That was her mistake when he used that momentum to bounce off of the wall and knock Magpie onto the other side of the room. "I have no interests in hurting you, Magpie. Have you even figured it out?" she asked as she got up from some of the equipment that she landed on, even with a scalpel deep within her chest. "I can't feel pain." To emphasize the point, she pulled it out without even flinching to show that the blade was coated with her blood before tossing it to the side. "It is yet another thing they have stolen from me." "Then let me help you get it back," Batman said to her as he started to walk towards her. "I know what it's like at times to fight against your nature, and you're going to lose it if you don't get help." When hearing this, she wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold before turning her back towards him. "But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That I've already lost." Without warning, she brought her hand out and stabbed her nails into his neck before quickly pulling them out. Batman grunted with pain as he stumbled back to hold onto his neck and cursed himself for letting his guard down on that moment. He soon started to feel drowsy and everything around him started to look foggy. "What did you do?" "Hush, little bat. Let the Karari do the work and go to sleep. And just like that, he was out like a light. She chuckled at the sight before her as she moved towards his body to unstrap his belt and placed it onto herself with joyful glee. She then started to move things around the room to her liking, while getting the Batman onto the operating bed. Though it wasn't long as the Dark Knight started to stir, it made her feel more excited for what's to come. "Wakey wakey, eggs and bakey," Magpie said as she saw the man slowly start to wake up with an audible groan. He started to fidget around as he tried to get himself free, but it was useless with him strapped down tight with the metallic locks in place. "Don't worry, Batman, I didn't peek behind the mask. After all, a person's secrets are sacred." "I meant what I said, Magpie. I can help you," he said to hopefully convince her to possibly let him go. Though given the reaction she's about to give out. "Quiet," she yelled out as she kicked him across the face. "Wasn't all that great?" "Oh, sorry. That was rude," Magpie said as she quickly composed herself. "I do appreciate the offer, but I've already got it covered." As she got closer to him, Magpie pulled out a device from a bag and waved it in front of the hero's face. See this little gizmo? Braxton made it to remove memories, reformat the brain, and wipe it clean in the process. She then placed it onto Batman's head before settling her hands onto the sides of his face. It took some time, but I figured out how to reverse the process. To put all of those back. As she drew her face closer to claim his lips, a scream rang out in the building to halter the bird-themed woman's action. It seems that my other guest has finally awoken. It's time to reclaim what is mine. But before I go, Magpie placed her lips onto his and moaned in the process before pulling away with his bottom lip in between her teeth. She then let go and let out a chuckle at his narrowed gaze. I would say that it's been a pleasure, but you won't remember a thing. When she walked towards the nearby panel, Batman moved his hand a little to get a little tool out of his glove and placed it at the ready to free himself. Tada for now, Batman. Magpie then flipped the switch with a sadistic smile which then sent the 1,000 volts of electricity to surge through the table and the device. This caused the Batman to yell out in pain and let go of the tool in his hand onto the floor. Seeing this, Magpie gained a bigger smile as she ran out of the room towards her other captive. Needed to focus. Batman thought as he tried to get himself free, but it was hopeless. That was until the switch was flipped again to shut off the power. So, how was your Brian Shiatsu massage? A joyful said, getting Batman to realize who saved him. I would assume you enjoyed it, but then I would be lying. Mind getting me out of this, Vanitas? Yeah. Don't get your bat panties in a twist. The black and white themed man said as he gripped Batman's shoulder and phased him out of his bindings. You're welcome, by the way. Batman soon felt a burning sensation around his head and pulled off the device in response. It started to spark off like crazy before smoke started to come off of it. Must have been faulty. The disguised publisher said as he crouched down to inspect it without touching. Wonder if Braxton had a warranty on this thing. He then heard something drop onto the floor. In response, he looked towards the source and saw Batman run out of the room with a file by the room's entryway. With mild curiosity, Vanitas went towards the file and picked it up to inspect it before his eyes widened underneath the helmet. Back with Batman, he was running through the hallways to hopefully get to the other kidnapped person in time. He was getting closer and closer as the screams grew louder. Before he knew it, he came to the targeted room and rammed his way through. This sudden occurrence caused Magpie to pause her advancements towards a bounded Ravencroft before a batarang flew past her head and embedded itself towards the nearby mirror. It was then that Magpie saw Ravencroft's shocked face, making the bird-themed woman tilt her head in confusion before looking at the mirror to see. What the hell is going on? She growled out as got off of Ravencroft and walked towards the mirror. Who is that? Whose face is that? You don't know? Did you? Batman said as he walked towards her. Know what? Tell me. 2 different personalities in one body. Totally unaware of the other's presence. What the hell are you going on about? Margaret Sarah was in an experiment conducted by Ravencroft and Braxton. For your cooperation and participation, you were given early release. He said to Margaret as she looked back towards the mirror to see Cassie staring back at her. Apparently, the white hair she had before was actually a wig. Lies. It can't be true. They took my memories. They stole them from me. She yelled out as she kept staring back at her reflection. I'm sorry, but you did this to yourself, Margaret. You volunteered for the experiment. Batman said to her as she kept glaring furiously at the reflection. The experiment was supposed to strip the bad out of criminals, and in your case it worked, for a while anyways. When hearing this, her features softened before tilting her head downwards to not let anyone see her features. They gave you a new identity, a new face, a new life, but it seemed that the bad was too strong to really let go. It came back different, something else, or rather someone else. Lies. She yelled out as she slammed her hands onto the mirror,
cracking it to end up making her hands bleed.
I want to know who I am and only she can give it back to me.
Magpie then punched Batman out of the way, onto the ground, before running towards the bound Ravencroft and prepared to skewer the woman with her elongated nails. That was until a few playing cards came in contact with the sharp appendages and sliced through the nails in a clean cut.
Sorry that I'm late.
Vanitas said as he summoned a few daggers into his hand. This place can be hard to navigate without you guys talking. The bird-themed woman looked down onto the ground and saw her clipped nails to see them glisten from the mixture of their previous shine along with her blood coated on them. She then started to pick them up one by one with perverted wonder dancing through her eyes. Shiny, Margaret said as she started to laugh a little before throwing her broken claws towards Vanitas. In this sudden move, he blocked the projectiles with his daggers. But this was all a ploy as she ran towards the masked publisher and kicked him out of the way to run through the hallway.
Now that was rude.
Vanitas said as he got up from the floor before he got pushed out of the way to end up back onto the floor.
Seriously. Help the doctor. I'll stop Magpie. Batman yelled out as he ran to catch up onto Magpie without getting a response. He ran and ran as fast as his legs can go to catch up, but she was too far ahead of him. He then realized where she was going and what she was going to do.
Briefly remembering what Vanitas said about the device being faulty made him push himself to the limits to reach the crazed woman in time.
Come on. Come on.
She growled out as she tried to get the device to work.
What the hell is wrong with this thing? Stop. Batman yelled out as he got closer to the room. You will not stop me from becoming whole again.
She yelled out as she stopped what she was doing and kicked the Batman. He blocked this and pushed her towards the other side of the room to get several oxygen tanks to get loose from their placements. She came towards him again and he dodged in response. Batman then threw several batarangs towards her, in which several were blocked but one strayed off of its course and hit the nozzle of an oxygen tank. With the sudden release of oxygen, it propelled forward and slammed against Magpie and sent her towards the electrified operating bed before the container slammed against the control panel to activate it. Soon thousands of volts of electricity soon sprang to life and traveled through the entire bed and reached the device on Magpie's head to activate it, despite it being damaged. With how damaged things were for the control panel and the device, the power intensified to the point that it engulfed Margaret's entire being. Her screeching started to intensify as the device overloaded and exploded, sending her off of the operating table and onto the floor to render her unconscious. Batman got closer and crouched towards her down form and checked for a pulse to see if she was alive. He then sighed in relief to feel one before eyeing his belt around her waist. No more shiny for you, he said as he unbuckled it and placed it back onto himself to feel the familiar weight of it around his waist. Is Magpie all right? Vanitas called out as he came into the room. I heard the loud screech. She's unconscious, but with the device overloading I don't know if she'll be mentally fine. Batman answered before speaking again. What about the doctor? She's pretty shaken up, but she's all right, the disguised publisher stated. Ravencroft had no idea that her receptionist was Margaret Sorrow. Makes sense, the Dark Knight said as he adopted a thinking pose. Different face, different memories. I'm guessing that Margaret subconsciously drove her into doing those acts for revenge against Braxton and Ravencroft. Now Margaret, Cassie, Magpie or whoever she now calls herself could go back to jail. But it would only bring her back into her cage that created her. Batman said in a stern voice, making Vanitas to hold up his hands up to calm things down. Hey, I said could go back to jail. But with her mental sickness, I'm suggesting she should be put into Arkham. It's the only place that could help remedy her of whatever she has now. The masked Uzumaki explained, getting the masked billionaire to nod in agreement. So, while you go call GCPD to do whatever they need to do, I'll go take the little bird here to Arkham. No, you're not. Batman growled out before black and white smoke appeared to reveal Vanitas' motorcycle with the owner on it with Magpie leaning towards his chest. Multiple scarfs then sprung around the two to tie Magpie closer to the black and white themed man. Soon the engine of the vehicle came to life as the rider revved its engines.
"I wasn't asking,"
he said over the loud noise before moving his motorcycle and drove through the wall without breaking it to make the man head towards his destination. This made the Batman sigh in defeat on not having things done his way again from the masked individual as he ended up calling the GCPD for the heads up. Next day, Arkham Asylum. I still can't believe Vanitas was here and I didn't get the chance to meet him. Harley groaned out as she was sitting next to Naruto in her office. Both of them were eating something Naruto cooked for the two of them since Harley couldn't properly go out and eat something healthy with her new schedule. He already dropped off something for Pam to eat in her cell before coming into Harley's office so the two could at least bond a little. It was some time after Harley got off from work when Vanitas showed up to the asylum. Causing an uproar with him riding his motorcycle through the main doors of the building made security be on high alert and surround the black and white themed hero with their weapons towards him. He stated that he was only here to drop off a mentally ill criminal and be on his merry way. Of course, Dr. Leland came in to help defuse the situation and ask what was going on. From there, the new hero explained the situation of what occurred earlier, making the good doctor to get security to get Margaret Sorrow into her new cell. It wasn't long until Vanitas kept on to his promise and left the building to God knows where.
"Don't feel too bad, Harley. Gulp, you might get another chance if you're lucky," Naruto told her in between bites from his home-cooked meal. "Yeah, I guess you're right, Naruto,"
the intern replied before taking another bite out of the delicious food in front of her. Given the chances with him being a new hero and sometimes how frequent some inmates escape, I wouldn't be surprised he'll show up quite often. "So, what's this I hear about you having this Margaret/Magpie as your new patient?" he asked, getting Harley to send him a curiously surprised look. "When I was coming back from Pam's cell, I heard some doctors say that the new inmate is now your patient."
"Damn it,"
she cutely pouted as one of her feet kicked across the ground.
"And here I wanted to tell you, and now the surprise is ruined." Sorry on that. "It's no problem really. I wanted to tell you on me having a new patient so soon," she happily said as slight joy came across her bright blue eyes. "I know it sounds odd to most people, but for me it's a big accomplishment in a way." "That's great to hear, Harley,"
Naruto said as he hugged her from the side, missing the blush that soon came across her features.
"Don't mind me asking, but who assigned her to you and when do you start?" "In order, Dr. Bartholomew did, since he was very impressed with my evaluation on Pam's split personality.
That he wanted me to try and work through Margaret's case, which could be similar.
As for when I start, I'm guessing it might be later today,"
Harley explained as she kept digging into her food to savor each bite. "I have an odd guess that Dr. Serrano was rather pissed when you snagged that case."
"Oh, you have no idea.
Then I wish you the best of luck with your new patient."
"Thanks.
I'll need every bit of luck I can muster for this one since this will not be as easy like with Pam," the blonde intern stated as the two continued on with their meals and on to other topics before Naruto had to leave. As this was going on in the women's wing, the newest inmate was staring into nothing behind the glass-covered cell with metal bars added in. The addition to her cell was put in just in case if she had any bright ideas if she tried to cut her way out of the glass barrier with her extremely sharp nails that seemed to chip off and regrow at every other attempt.
Shiny, shiny.
Even with the straight jacket she had on wouldn't last long as it was torn to shreds because of her nails. So, with every attempt she's done to try and escape, she would keep gathering her broken nails and place them onto a pile in her cell. The glistening of the sharp objects gave her eyes a nice spectacle to admire in placement of her broken mind.
Shiny, shiny.
Of course, if one were to look from up above, the broken nails were rearranged to look like the shiny helm of a certain hero. With what she saw last night of the moon reflecting off of its surface made her desire it even further before drifting back to unconsciousness with its image in her mind.
Shiny, shiny. So, look out Vanitas. Margaret's sorrow is gone. There's only Magpie now. Shiny shiny. Chapter 15, It's Not Safe Here.
Tonight could possibly be a very important night at Wayne Towers. Many people are in attendance to the event, from news crews, business owners, people of science, environmentalists, etc. You might ask of what's so important going on at that location that it needs so much attention. Well, let's find out, shall we? Thank you all for coming tonight here at Wayne Towers,
Bruce said to address the audience.
He was currently standing behind a podium with flashes keep going on and off to indicate the press taking photos of the event. I'm proud to announce that Wayne Industries continues its quest to advance the human condition with the latest technology it can muster, with the innovation to not only address the nation's energy needs, but also the world's.
Wonder what the latest solution is going to be this time?
Naruto asked in a low enough tone of voice for only Selena to hear. People in the past have said different variations, and some succeed in their goals while others crash and burn. Who knows for sure, but we'll have to wait and see.
Selena responded back while both of them were sitting next to each other in the audience.
Naruto had gotten a call from Bruce a few days ago to invite him to this press event. From what he vaguely stated, he'll be releasing a possible new solution to help the world's energy crisis. Sure, there isn't one now, but with how the world's population tends to waste energy and go through various means of needing to acquire it can be rather costly. So the publisher decided to take up on the offer for the exclusive press release. As for why Selena is with him, Naruto thought that since this possible solution would dramatically affect the environment in a positive way, so he decided to bring her along for the ride. He would have also invited Pam to the event if she wasn't still admitted into Arkham.
She was still considered mentally unwell and can't be released until Cammy knows when.
Naruto also invited Harley as well, but with how complicated her sessions were with Magpie,
he could understand that she needed every ounce of focus on the damaged woman.
Soon the image of an interesting-looking battery was on display with some animations following after.
The Zephyr. A high-output, perpetual energy source since the sun, all wrapped up in the form of a battery. Okay, this seems interesting,
Naruto stated as he unconsciously scooted further from his seat with Selena mirroring his action. One might think that this little battery would give you a never-ending flashlight, but it can power much more than that. Just one of these can be able to power an entire city for years, saving millions and practically billions in each form of currency. Even to the point of giving the world an energy surplus after eliminating the energy waste we do every day in our lives. No more harming the environment, but instead help heal it by leaving it alone through the Zephyr.
Bruce explained, getting many audience members to react positively on the applications on the device. I thought you might like that. So don't take my word on it. Meet the man behind this breakthrough, Simon Feck,
the billionaire stated as the man of the hour was presented. When he came off from the back area, it came to quite a shock to everybody that the man was actually a teenager, practically out of high school even. Simon Feck appeared to be in his late teens, reaching early 20s, with his long brown hair combed back with hints of peach fuzz on his face after shaving this morning. He wore a pair of wire-framed glasses for his brown eyes that showed hints of nervousness and anxiety, but mustered up his courage to stand at the podium in front of everyone.
Simon also wore a blue button-up shirt with a cream-colored suit to fit his form.
Thanks Mr. Wayne for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all, Simon said into the microphone as some people that were in the first few rows could see the teen fidget a little before taking a deep breath to continue. Throughout the world, we are wasting various resources incorrectly and not using them.
Clang.
A throwing star suddenly appeared out of nowhere and sliced through the microphone to embed itself onto the podium, causing an uproar in the sudden occurrence. Soon several hooded men came down from the ceiling before they tossed smoke pellets across the stage and onto the audience to make things more complicated. From distracting the oncoming guards to getting people to flee in terror. Some guards were able to nab Simon and flee from the stage while others stayed in place to hold off the hooded men. They weren't that lucky as they were either knocked out or killed with bladed weapons for getting in their way of their goals.
Selena!
Naruto called out as he tried to find his friend amidst the chaos of the crowd.
Selena! Where are you?
His question is soon answered as he looked towards the side to see her running after the hooded men and Simon with the security detail.
Damn it!
The security detail was running as fast as possible while covering the young genius towards the exit. But Simon had stepped wrongly during the run and fell towards the ground, getting the security team to try and get him up.
Mr. Feck, we need to get -1 guard said before being kicked to the side and knocked out while the other guards were knocked out or killed in the process. You will be coming with us.
One of the hooded men blankly stated as he grabbed a hold of the teen's arm and tried to take him away.
Hey!
The yell was the only warning one of the hooded men got before being pounced on by Selena and wrapped her legs around his neck before using her momentum to throw him into another hooded man. She then jumped towards one of the men and swung her legs around to hit the man several times before landing on the ground to sweep kick another. When both were on the ground, she dived towards them and landed her knees on their chests to hopefully knock them out before moving on to the next few of hooded men.
Help!
Simon pleaded as one of the men was dragging him to God knows where until someone else showed up. Grabbing the assailant's arm and twisting it around to let go of the teen before kicking the man towards the wall hard.
Sorry for the wait, Mr. Feck.
Vanitas said to the scared teen.
Traffic was a nightmare. Look for cover and come out when it's over.
He didn't get a response from the teen as the masked publisher dashed towards the closet hooded man and elbowed him in the stomach. He then grabbed a hold of his head and tossed him over his shoulder onto another man coming towards him. Seeing several assailants coming at him, Vanitas summoned various cards and daggers into his hands and threw them to pierce non-lethal areas of the body to hopefully put them out of commission. Didn't work as he had hoped. The masked Uzumaki then had to run towards them and make quick work out of them before moving on to the others.
Mind if I join this dance?
Vanitas rhetorically asked as he dived towards one of the men and in a somersault-like move, threw him onto another man before summoning his Eskrima sticks.
Not at all.
Selena grunted out as she grabbed another man's head with her arms while her legs grabbed another man's head and twisted them to subdue them.
Would appreciate the help really. Blows were traded and blocked as the two were making good work out of the hooded men.
Some were getting back up and were ready to take more punishment.
That was until a dark figure fell down from the ceiling and kicked one of the men onto another. Seems Batman finally showed. Vanitas called out to get Selena's attention on the new arrival.
Wonder if he'll play along with us, she said as she blocked a few punches and tossed the man towards Batman, who had punched him in the air.
Like we have a choice in the matter. Things seemed to be wrapping up as the enemies dwindled down to just a handful.
Knowing they weren't going to win, they threw tons of smoke pellets onto the ground to cover their escape along with gathering what men they could gather. When the smoke cleared, there were a few hooded men lying on the ground that seemed to have been left behind. Vanitas came towards one of them and saw what the man was wearing after things settled, and the outfit seemed familiar to him.
Isn't this the same outfit that Minato wore?
Naruto thought as he remembered his encounter with this world's counterpart of his father.
It looked very similar to the man's lying on the ground if he added on lightning designs on it. Coming closer to the man and pulled off the hood before questioning him. Who sent you?
He didn't get anything of a proper response as the man started to speak in a foreign language. It was odd at first, before Naruto saw the man open his mouth to flick something from his tooth and bite hard on it. Coming to the realization on what the man was doing, the black/white themed man tried to pry open his mouth, but it was too late as foam started to come out.
Fuck!
Vanitas yelled out in frustration.
He used a cyanide pill. And he's not the only one.
Selena said as she saw the other hooded men foam in the mouth as well.
Seems whoever they were, didn't want to get questioned.
Guess so.
Batman said once he got back up to inspect one of the hooded men. Custom-made clothing, several weapons each, etc. Dangerous men by the likes of it. No kidding.
Vanitas said as he walked towards Simon Feck's hiding spot and knocked a few times.
It's safe to come out, kid. Thanks.
Simon nervously said.
You guys saved my life. It's what we do.
The masked Uzumaki stated before he phased himself into the walls to get away.
Grown again, I keep missing my opportunity to thank him.
Selena frustratedly said before feeling a weight wrapped around her. Looking down she saw it was Simon and heard him mutter thank you to her.
Yeah, that's fine. Not to be rude, but mind getting off. Sorry.
The teen said as he unwrapped himself and saw the mixture of dead and unconscious bodies on the floor around him.
Can we get out of here, please?
Yeah, follow me. When the two of them were outside, they barely saw the police arrive onto the scene with several officers running inside. The two were then approached by a pair of officers that were pretty familiar to the thief. They were about to be questioned until someone called out to her.
Selena!
Naruto called out as he got closer.
Thank Kami you're alright. What happened? I lost sight of you when everyone went nuts.
Thanks Naruto, and I was about to tell these two about what happened.
She said when she pointed towards officers Montoya and Uchiha.
Yes, we were going to ask what happened as well. The Uchiha said as he pulled out a notepad and pen.
Would you mind telling us? Not at all.
Selena said as she recalled the events that happened on the inside, with Simon adding in his point of view of what happened.
As this happened, Bruce came onto the scene with a worried expression on his face. Everyone okay?
The billionaire asked as he also looked towards the teen genius.
Simon, are you alright? Yeah, I'm fine.
Mr. Feck responded to the business owner.
But why were they after me? What did I do? Making the Zephyr, I'm guessing. Naruto answered, getting slight attention onto him.
It seems that whoever targeted you either wants it for themselves or wants you out of the picture for possibly ruining their businesses.
I agree.
With the Zephyr having untold potential of saving power for the world, various people would feel threatened on losing a lot of money in the process.
Bruce nodded at his friend's thoughts. Since he's a target, perhaps police custody for the time being? Montoya asked with good intentions.
I'm sure that the GCPD can do everything that we have in our disposal for your safety, Mr. Feck. No offense, officer, but from what I saw in there, I'm guessing that you guys won't be able to protect him well. Selena stated, getting the officers to look towards her, especially with Detective Bullock and Commissioner Gordon overhearing the conversation.
Are you saying that we ain't good enough to protect the kid?
Bullock said as he felt pissed off and offended on what was just said. Not that I trust the police or anything, the thief said to hopefully cool off the detective a bit, but those hooded men were professionals and could maybe slip through and do whatever goal they want with minimal ease.
I see your point, Ms. Kyle. So, what should be done instead? Gordon asked as he tried to think of something with recent events. Simon could stay at Wayne Manor until proper help arrive and get him to a better location. Bruce offered, getting varying looks from the group. Are you sure about that, Bruce? I know your home is big and whatnot, but is it well protected? Naruto asked the obvious question. With my latest security added into my home, I think so. But if it makes things a bit better, the GCPD could come help out if they want. Will she be there?
Simon suddenly asked as he gained a slightly hopeful expression. I would maybe feel safer if she or one of those heroes that saved me were there.
Selena was about to say something when Bruce suddenly spoke. Of course, she'll be there. She won't leave your side for the night. What? Selena and Naruto thought as they looked at the billionaire with semi-shocked looks. Okay then.
I'll be sure to help transport Mr. Feck to your residence and get security brought over there for the evening. Gordon said as he looked at the two friends and knew he should probably get out. He already had enough experience with his daughter and late wife to know that kind of look.
Come on, Simon, let's head out. As the others started to leave, both Naruto and Selena were practically burning holes into the billionaire. To which, the same man gave them a questioning look. What? What were you thinking to say that I'll help out in protecting him? Asked the thief with a similar thought going through the publisher's head. Just hear me out, okay? Knowing Bruce might be going somewhere with this, Naruto stood down a little and placed his hand on Selena's shoulder to calm her down. She relented and awaited for Bruce's reason for doing this without her consent. Reason why I jumped the gun was because Simon is very scared on what happened and he needed someone a bit familiar to keep him safe. Safe. You were there to protect him and this made him feel safer around you, Selena. He told her as she tried to process this. I can understand that, Bruce, but it made it seem that I'm a bodyguard and I'm not all that great protecting people. Animals in the environment, I do what I can, but humans can go so far. The billionaire thought this over and came up with an idea. How about a compromise? Which would be what exactly? You help protect Simon for the night and in return I'll pay for whatever cause you plan to help next. She thought this over on the pros and cons. While this was going on, Naruto pulled Bruce to the side and quietly spoke to him. You sure about that, Bruce? Naruto asked as he seemed to see the twinkle in Selena's eyes on that offer. You basically making a blank check offer to her and she's probably going to exploit it. I know that, but it's the only thing to possibly help her comply to the current situation. I hope this doesn't turn out where I think this might end up. The publisher thought as he started to think of the worst outcomes if his secret girlfriend complied to all of this. He didn't want to see her get hurt, or worse. It's a deal. The environmentalist said, getting Bruce to nod before walking towards his car that had recently pulled up. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Selena? Naruto asked in a worried tone. I'll be fine, Naruto. You don't have to worry about a thing. She replied before feeling his hand grab a hold of hers. Yes, I do have to worry. I just don't want you to get hurt tonight if those hooded men come back for Simon. She saw the look on his face and gave him a kiss on the lips to calm his worries a little. I know, honey. I can take care of myself and when push comes to shove, I'll think of something. Nothing was said after that as Naruto sighed in defeat before giving her a worried look. The two made it to his car and made their way to Wayne Manor for the coming events. Unknown location. In a dimly lighted room, several figures were crouching down in a spotlight seemingly waiting for something. Upon closer inspection, they were the same hooded men that came to Wayne Towers. None of the men moved at all until a voice called out from the shadows making them stand up to attention. The Zephyr holds so much potential for our cause. Reason why each of you, along with your fallen members, were sent to retrieve the battery along with its creator, Simon Feck. The voice said all around them to make it hard to pinpoint where it's originating from. Yet each of you came back empty-handed. All because of one woman before Batman and this newcomer, the Nitas, showed up. Some failures can be overlooked, reason why each of you will be sent back out for this mission, under someone else. Once that was said, a figure stepped out of the shadows to reveal a unique outfit that wasn't a standard attire of the group. The man wore a set of ornamented black and silver body armor that was fitted around his body to show no restrictions on his body movement. The other unique feature of the man's outfit was the silver ape mask with flowing white hair to cover up a lot of his features. Carrot Alfred. Your mission is simple, get Simon Feck and the battery. You can do the option if you want to either get the inventor or the battery on their own. It will be done, Lady Shiva. Silver Monkey replied as he nodded towards his new team and ushered them to follow for their mission. Wayne Manor. Did not realize that Bruce was so much into dog art. Selena said as she saw the various works of art in the Wayne estate. They were his father's actually, along with ones from the past several generations of the Wayne family. Alfred replied as he gave a small tour to the guests. It was comprised of Commissioner Gordon, Naruto, Selena, Simon, and a well-dressed man that screamed security detail. Yet he doesn't have a shred of cat-themed work at all from what I'm seeing.
the thief thought as her little habit of inspecting works of art kicked in. But are you sure this place is secured? Simon asked the butler as he tried to calm his nerves and played with something in his coat pocket, possibly the Zephyr battery. You could say that Wayne Manor would actually be called Wayne Fortress, Mr. Feck, Mr. Pennyworth said before pointing to a security camera above. Security cameras monitor the house and grounds at all times. Current military grade with prototype Wayne Tech motion and heat sensors in every room. Even have an emergency lockdown to be sure no one can come in or out. Seems a bit overkill if you ask me, Naruto said in a hushed tone to his secret girlfriend, which made her nod a little. She had broken into fancier residences before, but this seems over the top. If she ever wanted to do such a thing here, she'll have her work cut out for her. The group soon came towards a bookcase with nothing on it before touching the side of it to make the piece of furniture move out of the way. And here we have our panic room. An impenetrable vault filled with supplies to last for 6 months. Paranoid much, Alfred? Naruto asked out loud, making the butler chuckle a little. Indeed, but you can't be too sure with being the owner of a multi-million/billion-dollar company. Could possibly be targeted at a given notice. The former Secret Service operative replied back towards the publisher. Of course, with recent events, we have not only the GCPD here to keep young Mr. Feck here safe, but also the hired help of Mr. Reese and his security team to be sure that nothing bad will happen. That's correct, and it won't, Reese replied in a bland tone. So, Mr. Feck, I hope you feel safer during your stay in Wayne Manor. Alfred said, getting the teen genius to nod a little. Then I am confident that they, along with Ms. Kyle, will be more than enough to keep you safe until I get back, a voice said from behind the group. When they turned around, they saw Bruce finished getting ready for a date. And where do you think you're going, Bruce? Asked the publisher. Hot date, the man replied as he kept adjusting his cufflink. Well, as hot a date could be when going to a museum reception. And what about Simon? Too young and not my type. Naruto soon face-bombed at the odd joke his friend made before pulling him away from the group to talk to him alone. First off, bad joke there, Bruce. Second, you don't joke in this kind of situation since Simon's life is in danger. And third, what the hell is wrong with you? Naruto said with his growing frustration towards the billionaire. What do you mean? What do I mean? I'm talking about that you're not staying here to be sure Simon is safe and sound for the evening until the proper authorities arrive in the morning. And you're going out tonight to have a Kamadam date? Naruto yelled out in a low tone as to not draw too much attention to them. Is there something wrong? Selena asked as she came up to the two men. Nothing's wrong, Selena. I'm just going to leave now, the publisher said as he made his way to the entrance of the estate. Let me talk to him, she said before glancing back at the business owner. I'm sure I can try to help him cool off. She didn't wait for a response as she went after her secret boyfriend. Well, that could have gone better, sir, Alfred said as he came up to his charge. Yeah, it could have, Bruce said as he walked some distance away towards the old grandfather clock that hid one of the entrances to the Batcave. So what are you going to do now, Master Bruce? I need to find out who's after Simon Feck. Might I suggest searching his lab? See if anyone might go there to take what they can't take from the source. Thank you, Alfred, not like I've done this before, Bruce responded as he was about to pull a secret lever in the grandfather clock to open up the passageway. Before you go, I do have something to say to you, sir. Which would be that I think you should figure out better methods and excuses to get out of certain spots. Like dates being one of them. Don't see what's wrong with that method, since they've turned out fine in the end. Unless you look at it in a certain perspective, sir, Alfred said before elaborating his claim. You need to realize that if you keep leaving from certain events, dates, and whatnot, then it might draw suspicion towards yourself. So do try to think of a better way to get yourself out if possible, from an important business meeting that you can't miss out on or something else. Even if you plan to find a future Mrs. Wayne, then you can't keep using that old excuse or else you'll end up breaking the woman's heart and start a trend among other bachelorettes that you don't plan on commitment. Once that was said by his faithful friend and father figure, Bruce had thought things through in quickened detail.
I see your point, Alfred. Once this situation is over with, I'll try to think of better excuses. That's all I ask, sir. So, are you sure the latest security system Earl and Marva had set up will do the job? Bruce asked as he opened up the entrance. I'm pretty sure about it, Master Bruce. If not, then they'll need to come on by quite often to do more installments to the systems to make up for the mistakes. Then I hope it doesn't come to that, was all Bruce said as he stepped into the pathway before closing the entrance to be sure no one noticed. Meanwhile, I've told you, Selena, that I'm fine, the publisher said as he tried to shrug off her slight concern. No, you're not, honey, and I can obviously see it, she said to him as she held onto his hand. I'm upset too on what Bruce did, but I'm trying to not actually voice it out. I know, Selena, but I just don't like how this is turning out so far. Same here, but I'm sure that things might go well by morning. I hope so, he said with a slightly downcast look upon his face. I just don't want another woman that I deeply love and care for be hurt. I already had that scare with Pam and I just don't know what would happen again because of it. Hearing this made Selena feel hurt on what Naruto was saying. He does love them a lot, but he doesn't know what she knows that could get those feelings to possibly worsen. She wants to tell him so badly, but she doesn't want to see his reaction on that information. Shaking those thoughts aside, she gave Naruto a reassuring smile before briefly kissing him. I'll be fine, honey. If those hooded men come back, then I'll do well to hold out on my own. With our sparring matches at either one of our places, it's been getting me to stay in my game. Good to know, he said to her with a small smile. Just promise me that you'll do what you can to stay safe. No promises, but I'll try to make it work. Another thing I should say before I go. Which is? That Reese fellow, he seems off to me, Naruto said, getting his secret girlfriend to look at him funny. How so? He seems pretty fine to me. I don't know, but just stay wary of him, okay? Will do, she said to him before making her way back to the teenage genius. Once out of his peripheral vision, Naruto frowned a bit as he made his way out of the door and into his car. He needed to get his mind focused onto something, and one started to creep onto his thought process. The publisher needed to find out who those men were and who sent them. With how they fought and worked, they were obviously assassins/shinobi like from his old reality. Even with how they dressed made him make some connection with what Minato wore, that the man was affiliated with the group. So, with that in mind, Naruto needed to make his way to Simon Feck's lab and possibly see if he might catch them there. Since the source is under lock and key, his lab might be the next best source to possibly nab whatever information there was on the Zephyr project. He can tell that this was going to be a very long night. Simon Feck's lab. What Batman saw once he came into the lab was that it was a complete mess. Glass was everywhere along with various papers and materials. It seems that he was already too late, that whoever was behind the attack already came by to hopefully grab the Zephyr. Hoping to find better clues out of this, he brought his hand up to his mask and pressed a little switch to activate his detective vision prototype that Marva has been working on. From what the female Cooper told him when he was handed the device was that it could help him survey a crime scene better than before, just in case if he possibly missed something. The initial plan on the final version, with some initial upgrades, would have Bruce be able to have an X-ray vision of sort to see how many crooks there are in an area so he could take care of them easier. Not only that, but also do the crime scene analysis that once all clues have been gathered, the scene of the crime could be played out in front of him in real time per se. It was an interesting idea for the Caped Crusader, and he seemed pretty forward with the idea to maybe help him out easier depending on certain situations.
So far with the prototype he has in his cowl was that it is very limited so far until another model would come out, but it will suffice. When going through the room, Batman saw various footprints highlighted on the floor and moving all over the place until they ended at certain spots. It was then he realized that they were in the ceiling, causing him to duck down when a pair of katanas came down towards him. He was able to block them with his arm braces, but the weight placed on them caused him to struggle a little. Once pushing himself free from the bladed entrapment, he punched one of the hooded men while kicking the other before he realized they had him surrounded.
Who sent you? Batman growled out to seek out an answer.
All that he got in response were the hooded men to drop various smoke bombs onto the ground to cover their escape. He looked around for any sign of them, but there were any. That was until he heard something clatter onto the ground and rolled towards him until coming to a stop. Once looking down, he saw that it was several grenades. And they were primed to blow. Seeing that he needed to get out quickly, he ran towards the nearby window and dived through it so he wouldn't get caught up in the blast. He was lucky to make it out just in time, as a few seconds after breaking through the glass barrier, the room blew up in a fiery blaze. By the time he glided back towards the ground, he heard several motorcycles coming his way to make him realize those hooded men were escaping. Running towards his motorcycle he had nearby, he quickly started its engines and raced off to catch up to them. Unknowns to him, he missed another motorcycle coming after the same targets once he sped off.
Wayne Manor.
The sound of humming was coming from a certain part of the panic room. Selina had been dealing with it for a bit, with Simon listening to his music from his cassette player. It at least kept him preoccupied, as she was mostly left alone to do her own thing, which was looking through the surveillance footage being recorded live. It seemed odd that she was on this side of the monitors, that she would always try to stay out of the feed. But this time, she needed to rely on them to be sure Simon was safe and sound. This gave her the opportunity to think on recent events with her relationship with Naruto and how great he has made her feel. The love they have for each other is real and is growing at a good pace. She enjoyed the dates they have gone to, with the ones they had at restaurants having to be done in private so they won't draw attention towards themselves. But of course, part of her thoughts keeps drifting back to what her eco-friend/shared friend towards Naruto's affection had told her, that made her feel uneasy on top of what's currently going on for the time being. She soon heard the humming stop as the young genius got up from his seat to stretch his legs a little by walking around the room. Probably looking around to keep his mind off of the current predicament he was having. He soon came to a stop when he saw a toy train in the room of all places and started to play with it a little. Always found trains to be fascinating. He said to break some of the silence by making small talk. Being a huge leap in technology in the Industrial Revolution, and things started to progress from there. Aside from that, I just enjoy the sense of feeling of the rush, speed, intensity, metal clanging and greatness. Some people enjoy being inside of it. Like leaving for a world anew, being in it gives this rush to see new sights that makes people imagine what will show up next. Everyone has their interests, I suppose. Yup. Was his short response before looking out of the bullet and blast-proof window to see most of Gotham in the distance. Seeing all those lights out there makes me think of how much is being wasted and what could have been done as a good replacement. When thinking back on my love for trains, on my thoughts when I was younger, that they never really stopped moving, I ended up with the idea for my battery.
Reason why you're being targeted now,
she blandly said, which made him feel depressed for a bit.
Sorry Simon, just too many things on my mind right now.
Same here, ma'am, he said to her apology. I just have so many thoughts running through my head that I just need to preoccupy myself the majority of the time. Whether it's listening to music, writing in my notebook of mine, or anything else for the most part. Reason how I was able to think of the idea for my battery for the most part.
Speaking of the battery, mind if I see it?
Selina said as she got closer to him.
Don't worry, I'll give it back to you.
He complied as he reached into his pocket, pulled out a little fabric-like case, and handed it over to the raven-haired thief. Once opening it, she saw it was black in color and wanted a better inspection of it, so she pulled it out of the case to let the light shine upon it. The moment she placed it on her hand, she couldn't help but comment on the feeling.
It's warm.
Yeah, a lot of power running through that little thing, he said to her as she handed back the little device. Once it was placed onto his hand, he soon gained a questioning look and started to mumble several things that Selena couldn't quite make out.
Is something wrong? It seems warmer than I expected,
Simon said as he was fiddling around with it in his hand.
It seems to be getting hotter. Should we get some ice for it then?
Would be the best idea, he said to her before letting out a yawn.
Right before I go to bed. It's been a long day.
Both of them soon exited the panic room as they made their way to the kitchen to grab a cup full of ice, before making it to Simon's assigned room for the evening. Along the way, the two ran into Alfred and told him that Simon was going to retire for the evening. Once making it to the guest bedroom and before attempting to lie down on the piece of furniture, Selena started to inspect the room for anything that seemed amiss to her. Call it a slight case of paranoia, but with what is going on that one can't be too sure to be safe. If you need anything, Simon, just yell. I'll be outside to make my rounds, she told him as he got situated on his bed with the cup of ice by the bedside. As this was going on, Alfred was meeting with the head of security to inform him on the latest form of detail.
I am here to tell you that Mr. Feck is in his room,
Alfred said, getting the man to nod at this.
You can lock down the property for the night on your end.
I already informed Commissioner Gordon on this and he's doing his duty on his end.
Good to know,
Reese said before both men went their separate ways. When making it towards the gate, he saw several police officers there with some of the other security detail.
The package is set in for the night. Is there anything else to report?
Nothing at all, sir, one of the security details said, with some nearby officers roughly saying their own thing respectively.
Good,
Reese told them as all of the men turned their backs towards him.
Bang 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 bang.
The sound of the silencer went off as each of the men guarding the entrance fell down to the ground dead with blood spilling from the empty cavities in their heads. The person responsible was Reese as he placed the gun onto the ground and whistled lowly to get some hooded men to jump over the gate. Once they landed, they quickly hid the bodies while Reese went to the side where the bushes were at to change. During this time, something fell onto the ground nearby to reveal Reese's face.
Always hate wearing those,
the man muttered as he slipped on his metallic ape mask.
Time to move. Meanwhile, insert Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, The Chase of Highway.
The sound of motorcycles filled the air as they were racing through the streets of Gotham. Several hooded men were on their respective motorcycles to get away from the scene of the crime of Simon Feck's lab exploding. They were possibly on their way of getting scot-free, if it wasn't for Batman being on their tail. They tried to shake him off by losing him through various streets, but they forgot one thing: Batman practically knows these streets like the back of his hand. For every turn the motorcyclists made, he would cut them off from another street. It was frustrating for them to try and get rid of him on every chance they got.
That was when they went under an overpass when he arrived.
Vanita's motorcycle flew into the air from the overpass above to land in front of the hooded group, having them boxed in on both the front and back. The group then pulled out their katanas from their sheaths and were aimed towards the man in front of him to possibly cut him down. It wouldn't be that simple really, as Vanitas swerved around to momentarily face them. In those brief moments, he used one of his hands to summon a handful of daggers and threw them at the tires. The results were instant, with them being cut and punctured to send the motorcyclists either skidding into a wall, going off the road, or hitting a nearby parked car. When this was done, Batman drove towards one of the closest hooded men and picked the man up to question in.
Who sent you?
Talk.
It's too late, Batman,
the hooded cyclist said. You'll never stop them now. In his frustration, Batman knocked the man out with a punch before speeding off with Vanitas not far behind. The disguised billionaire started to punch some numbers on his motorcycle to try and call the manner, but it seems that whatever group these men are must have cut the lines. He then decided to punch in another set of numbers to call the communicator Alfred has on him and hopefully answer as soon as possible.
Hello? Alfred. Master Bruce. What's wrong? Alfred asked in an alarmed tone.
You need to activate the security systems and to get both Simon and Selina in the panic room now.
Even inform Commissioner Gordon if you can. Batman said as he yelled into the speaker in his helmet. But how will you get inside of the manor when the system is up? I'll find a way.
Bruce said as he saw some more hooded motorcyclists coming from behind him and Vanitas.
I'll have to get off now. Seems I got some tailgatters. Then good luck, sir. Once the call was ended, Batman saw Vanitas swerve his motorcycle around momentarily to try and perform the same action he did before. It was successful on one of the hooded men, but the others moved out of the way and onto another street to hopefully cut them off. It was then Vanitas drove a little faster to get close to the Dark Knight when he spoke out to him. I'm guessing they are after Mr. Feck?
The masked publisher asked out loud to hopefully get the masked billionaire to hear him.
They are. You go on ahead while I'll try to hold these guys off.
You sure?
I'm positive. Now go. Vanitas yelled out, making Batman to nod and pushed his motorcycle to its limits as he went further ahead. Now to buy him some time.
The hooded men were starting to catch up to the black and white themed hero with their weapons aimed towards him. Vanitas occasionally swerved around to throw several cards and daggers their way, but they were starting to wise up to what he was doing and they started to counter. Some of the motorcyclists pulled out some handguns and started firing at the masked Uzumaki, but they ended up hitting his invisible barrier around him.
Chuckle, they should think of something better before they run out of bullets. Naruto muttered as they continued with their bulleted assault.
He then needed to get them off of his tail soon before wising up yet again that guns won't work on him. So, he brought his hand out and charged up a Void Rasengan before turning back to aim it towards the hooded men.
Time to see if this works now.
Vanitas then pictured in his mind's eye a gun's trigger going off as a bullet went out of the barrel. In the outside world, the idea ended up the same as his arm acted like the barrel of a gun and fired off several Void Rasengans towards the men. They were caught off by surprise by this action as they ended up getting hit by the blasts with a few falling off of the bridge they were on, while the rest ended up crashing into each other.
That takes care of them.
Naruto said as he looked on ahead and saw Batman ride up the giant metal wires to support the bridge before jumping off of his vehicle. With the motorcycle plummeting towards the ocean below, Batman spread out his cape to activate its gliding function to fly towards Wayne Manor.
Show off. Earlier, Wayne Manor.
Selina was walking through the hallways to make her rounds while also looking at the various works of art present in the Wayne estate. She did recognize some works, while others she did not. She would have been interested in them, but the feline part of her only desired feline-themed works of art and jewels. Hell, there was even that one Van Gogh she saw in one of the hallways, but upon closer inspection turned out that it was a believable fake. Real one must be hidden in a vault somewhere in the manor.
The thief muttered as she kept checking every other corridor.
As she was expecting to see another security detail or police officer in one of the hallways, she ended up not seeing the person.
That's odd, should have run into one of them by now. She was going to keep moving forward until her foot ended up hit something on the ground to make it skid a bit.
Upon closer inspection, it was a police gun. When looking around a little, she ended up seeing the unconscious body of one of the officers tucked away in a poor fashion, making her realize that the hooded men were here. The thief made quick work of getting to the guest room and opened the door to see Simon sleeping in the bed. She went up to him and gave him gentle nudges to get him out of his sleep. It wasn't long until he did and felt alarmed when seeing the darkened figure above him.
"Hey, it's me, Selina,"
she told him, making him calm down a bit.
"Something's wrong, we need to move. Now." "Okay. Let me get the Zephyr," the teenager said as he glanced over to the cup of ice, well, cup of water now, and pulled out the device. "It's warm now." I don't know what's wrong with it.
Worry about it later, she said as she placed several pillows underneath the covers.
You sure that would work? I think I'm shorter than that,
he said before being pulled out of the room.
Come on,
she urged as she led him to another hallway and crouched down when she saw someone get closer to the room. In said room, the door opened up to reveal Silver Monkey. He surveyed the room and spotted the bed where the teenager was at. The monkey-themed assassin then pulled out his blow dart and blew into it to fire the tranquilizer dart towards the figure inside. Once that was done, he got closer to retrieve the drugged-up kid only to be kicked from behind and land face-first onto the ground. When Selena's surprise attack was successful, she quickly closed the door on the assailant and broke the handle.
We need to go to the panic room. Now.
Right, Simon said as he followed her towards their destination. If they stayed any longer, they would have seen the assassin shove his fist through the door. After navigating through several corridors of the manor, they eventually made it to the dining hall. From what Selena remembers from the brief tour she was given, they were almost close to the panic room. They would have gone further, but Selena heard something in the room and pushed Simon out of the way from 2 tranquilizer darts aimed towards them.
You missed,
she said as she looked towards the monkey-masked assassin from the other side of the dining room.
Simon, stay down and look for cover.
Right, he said as he quickly looked around and hid by one of the room decorating furnitures.
Give me the boy and you will have a swift death, Silver Monkey said as he came closer to Selena.
If not, then it shall be as more painful the longer the delay. She hummed in fake thought for a brief moment before giving her reply.
Sounds tempting, but no. Not gonna happen. Have it your way then,
was all Silver Monkey said before jumping onto the table and spun into the air to deliver an axe kick towards the thief. Selena rolled out of the way before grabbing onto one of the dining room chairs and swung it towards the assassin to hopefully stagger him. Didn't work all that well due to his armor, but she didn't relent on her assault. With the remains of the chair on hand, she started to attack him with her impromptu eskrima sticks. Her time sparring with Naruto were paying off a little as her assault kept the assassin at bay, but it could only do for so long. He found some openings to her form and exploited it by sending quick jabs and kicks to those spots to send her back a little. With the slight frustration she was now having, she threw the impromptu weapons at her opponent. The monkey assassin blocked them easily before making a grab at the woman, who was able to snag his hands. The two kept each other at bay without being able to move an inch. Without any warning, Silver Monkey had brought his head back and slammed it onto Selena's. With the slight daze, she was left open for him to whip out a hand claw and slashed her side.
Ah!
Selena screamed out as she held onto her side. Before she could do anything else, the assassin added more to the pain and kicked her in the abdomen, sending her straight towards the nearby wall. As he got closer with his clawed weapon to finish her off, a sound of a gun went off as his bladed weapon was broken. Looking onto the side, he saw the Wayne butler with a shotgun on hand with smoke coming out of the barrel with a scowl on his face. The assassin then whipped out a kunai from his sleeve and would have thrown it at the butler, but another gun went off to knock the weapon out of his hand. This time it was the newly arrived Gotham commissioner with some of his officers not too far behind him. Seeing as his luck went out, he fled from the dining room with bullets flying towards him.
I sometimes think the ones that dodge bullets would always be a bother, Alfred said as he rested his weapon.
Gordon then saw the teen genius nearby and came up to him.
Are you all right, Mr. Feck?
Yes, I'm fine, but I'm more worried about her.
When he said that, the others looked towards Selena leaning against the wall. Montoya went to check on her injuries and saw the bleeding wound on her side.
We need to get her to the panic room, Stat, the Hispanic officer said before addressing her partner. Sasuke, please help me out here.
Sure,
he replied as he went to the other side of the downed thief and helped her up.
We'll help cover you. Mr. Feck, Please stay close to Officers Montoya and Uchiha until we get to the panic room if you would," Mr. Pennyworth said as he had his shotgun at the ready.
With him in the front, Alfred had led the group towards the panic room with Officers Uchiha and Montoya carrying Selena in the middle, Simon not far behind and Gordon covering the rear.
It wasn't long until they got to their destination and they went inside before the butler started medical attention on the injured thief.
Unbeknownst to either of them, when Simon was leaving the dining room, part of the broken chair got caught onto his pocket and left a rip big enough for the small battery to fall out by the panic room's entrance. Navigating to the rendezvous point in the manor was a little tricky for the monkey-themed assassin, knowing that there were some remaining security details still active. When he got into the designated room, he was greeted with a handful of his fellow assassins for the mission at hand. They were about to discuss their next move when a figure dropped down from the ceiling, knocking one of the assassins down for the count.
"It only gets worse from here,"
Batman said as he stood ready for the fight at hand.
"Worse for whom, I wonder?" Silver Monkey taunted with there being more opponents against the Bat. He then dashed towards the hero with a downward punch before sending up a kick towards his abdomen with some other strikes.
They were blocked before the Bat grabbed a hold of his offending arm and kicked the assassin's sides and leg joints before tossing him to the side to focus onto the other assassins in the room. With the Batman distracted, Silver Monkey pulled out a small pellet and timed it correctly to toss it towards the hero's face. It was successful as the green gas came off with the hero groaning out when he tried to look around. With the Bat temporarily blinded, Silver Monkey was going to attack the hero when he heard something and looked towards the source coming from
outside? Dynamic entry. That's soon to be the assassin's downfall as he was suddenly kicked to the side and slammed against the wall, hard.
Landing on a slight crouch, Vanitas came back up and seemed rather cheerful given his body posture.
Seeming oblivious to his current surroundings, he seemed to brush off the imaginary dust off of his person. "Man, I can't believe I nailed that one. Getting past that security system was not easy," the black and white themed hero said before looking at the occupants in the room. "Hiya." One of the hooded assassins got out of his momentary shock and threw several shuriken at the new arrival.
It came to another shock for the other assassins to see the weapons go through him. They soon realized why there wasn't a broken window in his arrival since he somehow phased right through it.
Now that's just rude,"
Vanitas said before punching the one assassin's lights out.
"Didn't your parents tell you not to throw sharp things at people?"
None was responded back as the assassins went back towards their assault with Batman now out of his temporary blindness.
The two heroes once again worked together to take care of the home intruders.
Without them looking, Silver Monkey got back up from the ground and decided to leave for the panic room to collect the teenager and the battery.
Panic room. "Well, this will have to do for now,"
Alfred said as he looked over the work he had just finished. It took a bit to close the wound with what he had with the medical kit inside of the panic room, but it worked out in the end. "Just need to get these IVs attached to her and she'll be good as new."
"That's fine and all, Mr. Pennyworth, but what are we gonna do now?" Renee asked as she helped the butler clean up.
"All of our men have been subdued, either unconscious or dead, and that security system you said earlier is still up.
We can't get anyone else to come to the manor at the moment. So, I'm asking again, what are we gonna do?" "For one, I'm going to deactivate the security measures so that Commissioner Gordon here can properly call in for help," Alfred said as he went to the nearby computer and rapidly started typing the commands to shut down the system. "Help? But I thought we were safe in here," Simon said as he was starting to get more nervous with every moment. "You're never completely safe, I'm afraid," the butler said before glancing at the security monitor for outside of the panic room.
"Especially with the man at the door." The others saw what he was referring to. See Silver Monkey set up a bomb to hopefully blow up the entrance. Now would be the time to call in for help, Commissioner.
Outside of panic room.
Once setting up the bomb, the assassin quickly got far away from the estimated blast radius so he could be safe once he set it off. Pulling out the trigger, Silver Monkey flipped off its cover to finally prime it. He was about to press the button if it wasn't for a batarang hitting it out of his hands. He was going to quickly react to this, but a pair of black and white boots kicked his back, sending him towards the panic room entrance. I know this sounds cliché and all, but you should give up. Vanitas said as he and Batman started to walk closer to the downed assassin.
From what I'm seeing, that door is a titanium blast door.
Batman said once the two of them came to a stop. That bomb of yours might as well be a firecracker. There was no response on this as Silver Monkey wasn't really focused on the two heroes, but on the object his eyes had caught once he was face down on the floor.
The Zephyr. The assassin said in realization on what he is seeing. What?
The two heroes said before the assassin quickly moved from his spot and kicked the bomb towards the other wall to automatically explode on impact. When the smoke was cleared, the two heroes could only see a gaping hole to the outside with the assassin gone.
In response, the two ran after the retreating monkey without any further thoughts. I can't believe the Zephyr was just outside of the panic room.
Silver Monkey said as he raced his way towards his escape with the battery in his hand.
Couldn't let the opportunity slip from my grasps.
He would have run further ahead, but one of his legs got caught from underneath him, causing him to fall. In response, he quickly pulled out a kunai and slashed at the foreign object from his leg as the two heroes caught up. Once caught up, the two heroes tried to apprehend the assassin, but he held his ground as best as possible by blocking their kicks and punches. It wasn't until Vanitas ended up kicking the one hand that had the battery, causing it to let go and fall over the edge.
No!
Silver Monkey yelled out as he jumped above the two heroes and plummeted down towards the sea to reach it. As he got closer with his arm stretched out towards the prized battery, he saw the faint glow coming off of it until it was too late, it exploded. From up above, the two saw what happened and were confused on what they just saw. Once the explosion cleared, they saw that the man either escaped or possibly died due to the close-contacted explosion.
But one question that was on their minds was, what caused that to happen? Did you two apprehend him?
Gordon said as he, his two officers and the teen genius came onto the scene.
I'm afraid not, Commissioner. Vanitas said to the bespectacled officer. He got away with an explosion that oddly went awry.
It was then that the teenager gained a realization and fumbled around his jacket pocket to feel for something.
Is something the matter, Mr. Feck? Montoya asked as she saw what he was doing. The Zephyr. I must have lost it earlier when getting to the panic room. Why bring up the Zephyr now? I just realized on what that explosion was.
Simon said as he rubbed his head in slight frustration. I messed up, my battery became unstable and it was starting to deteriorate,
resulting with it exploding. Batman concluded with the new information.
All that raw power was building up too much without being used until it needed a way to escape.
Not a good way to go though. Vanitas said before seeing the teenager's face. Hey, don't worry, Simon, you're a smart kid. You'll figure out the problem in time. Sigh, I guess you're right. Well, I better get going. Nice seeing you, Commissioner, officers.
The disguised publisher said before he summoned his motorcycle and rode off, making the others move out of the way.
Hey! Warn us next time. Officers Montoya and Uchiha yelled out from the sudden action.
Well, I already called the nearby hospitals and other precincts to help take care of the wounded and the deceased Batman.
Don't know how many there are still alive or not.
Gordon said as he rubbed the back of his head.
Good to know. Then I hope your night gets better because of it.
The Dark Knight said as he jumped off of the ledge and glided down from the cliffside so he could get to the hidden entrance to the Batcave.
Outside of Wayne Manor.
I'm definitely going to hate doing this whole backtracking and waiting thing, Naruto said as he drove towards the gate leading to the estate.
The publisher had to leave the Palisades to get back to his parked car and drive all the way back after waiting for the police and ambulances to arrive at Bruce's home. He would have gone back sooner, but he didn't want to draw too much attention towards himself if he arrived too soon. Once coming closer, he saw the various vehicles on the grounds with doctors and officers all around to gather the wounded and dead bodies to the hospital and the morgue respectively. There must have been more than I thought, he muttered before his eyes landed upon a sight that made his heart slow down and go pale in the face. Naruto quickly pulled over and got out of his car before running towards what he just saw moments ago. Selena! Oh, hey Naruto! She weakly said as she was on a stretcher with several bags of 4 attached to her. Sorry that you have to see me like this. But what happened to you? I was protecting Simon from one of them in this monkey mask that slashed my side. Luckily for me, the panic room was very well equipped and Alfred got me all patched up. After Selena said this to him, Naruto felt a burning anger growing inside of him. If I ever see that monkey masked guy again, I swear. He shook himself out of his thoughts when he felt her hand grab a hold of his. Don't beat yourself out, honey. There was nothing that you could have done. Whatever happened, happened. She told him while gently squeezing his hand. So, what's going to happen now? From what I was told, Simon's going to be sent to the GCPD until morning where he'll be placed into protective custody. Probably going to be moved around for a while to ensure his safety. And you? Going to stay at the hospital for like a day or two. Chuckle, I prefer recovering at home, but the doctors would have wanted to keep an eye on me so I won't pull my stitches with how I got them. Naruto chuckled at this as he briefly remembered some of his times at the Konoha hospital once Granny Tsunade became the Hokage. Both she and Sakura would confine him to his hospital room until he made a full recovery. If he tried to escape the place, either one of them would hunt him down and strap him down on the hospital bed. Sigh, good times. Well, I'll be sure you'll be fine, Selena. I'll come on by tomorrow and check up on you. He told her as he leaned in and kissed her cheek before leaving. That is if she didn't grab a hold of his wrist. Naruto, there's something that I need to tell you. You could maybe tell me about it tomorrow when you're feeling better. He said to her since he could tell it's a private matter and he wouldn't want the doctors to hear this. Even though they are professional in not saying anything. No. I need to tell you this now, Naruto. She said with more conviction in her voice. I felt like I almost died earlier and there was so much I wanted to tell you. So I swore to myself that if I made it out of that mess earlier or was dying, I needed to at least tell you this one thing Pam asked me not to tell you. Hearing this, Naruto gained a confused and worried look before asking her of what she meant and what Pam told her exactly. She ended up telling him when the doctors left to check on the other wounded before driving off to the hospital. It was definitely quiet in the vehicle at this time before Naruto left and made it to his car to drive off to his next destination in mind. Arkham Asylum. Almost done and I'll finally go home for the night. Harley muttered as she was writing up her latest session with Magpie. It's been nearly a week since Harley had gained Margaret Sorrow, or Magpie as she desperately prefers to be called, as her new patient. She has been trying to break through the damaged woman to at least get some results in the first few sessions. From what she was told prior to the first session was that Margaret had suffered from a split personality syndrome with a case of amnesia along with no longer feeling pain of any form. Instead of the one Harley was more used to because of her interaction and friendship with Pam, there were two personas sharing Margaret's body without being known of the other. She was even told of what happened prior to the woman being admitted to Arkham. She had hoped to speak with Cassie, the lighter half of Margaret, in the past sessions, but it came to a failure. Then she remembered after the last attempt that Magpie tried to use a device to gain back her lost memories, but it was damaged and malfunctioned when it was attempted to be used again. Harley eventually came to the conclusion that Cassie possibly died that night and all that remains is the bird-themed woman, Magpie. From what the intern had observed from the session so far is that Magpie is a total wacko. Well, wacko isn't a proper thing to say actually. In a technical standpoint, she suffers from an obsessional syndrome with potential homicidal tendencies. Her uncontrollable obsession with shiny objects tends to send her mind in a pleasant state of
sorts that would preoccupy most of her time. Even decorated her cell with her clipped-off nails along with other shiny objects she tends to steal whenever she gets out of her cell. A lot of the guards have learned to leave her alone and not touch her shiny possessions after one guard came in to try and claim back a set of keys she stole from him. Nearly scratched his eyes out the moment he took them back. Since then, the guards and most inmates tend to stay away from the woman with a 5 to 10 feet pole and hide away any shiny valuables they have on hand whenever near her. It would have been simpler if that was all that was wrong with her. From the lost memories and her uncontrollable obsession with shiny objects. But it seems that there is more than that, since she had ended up being obsessed with the new hero, Vanitas. After a few unsuccessful sessions, Harley was heading home for the night when her eyes caught the glimpse of the security footage outside of Magpie's cell. It wouldn't be much of a problem if it wasn't for Vanitas standing in front of it. The blonde intern had asked why the guard didn't inform security about this, but he replied that Batman had actually done this a lot in the past with several inmates. It was all good in the end, so every other guard that sometimes sees this happen doesn't really report it. This made Harley's mind boggle on such a thing, and when she made her way to Magpie's cell to defuse the situation, that's when she heard it. Flashback. But I don't like being caged, Magpie said towards the hero. Her words lingered in space, paralyzing the world with the tone of voice of her feeling hurt, broken, lost, and most of all, afraid. When hearing this, Harley came to a stop when she heard this and hid behind a pillar so she wouldn't be seen. Why did she do this? She was supposed to go out there and stop what they were doing, but why? Why is she just hide and kept on listening in? I remember that Ravencroft and Braxton had kept you in a cage when they were studying you, Vanitas said with his helmet filtering a bit of his voice. This was actually the first time Harley had heard his voice, and from what she could tell right now, it had a sense of comfort that made her want to trust the man. Even though she isn't interacting with him. Yes. The bird-themed woman answered with her voice seemed very distant. I never liked tight spaces. So, you do remember. You were stripped of your memories, but you remember the cage. Nothing was said in the long silence. No sound at all, to the point that possibly a pin could be heard if it was dropped. It was so quiet that if this moment was to be hung up in a museum, it would have been passed as a prized painting. After a few more moments, she spoke with a shaky tone to it. I remember the cage. Is that all that you remember? No, only the cage. Then is that what you're afraid of? Being dragged back into the cell that made you? The hero pressed on with the information. Please, Magpie. Let me help you. I am afraid of it all. Her voice wavered in the answer. It was then Harley realized that this was her chance in gaining the information she wanted. So she quietly opened up her lab coat and pulled out her notebook and started writing quickly from what she just heard. It helped out even more that Magpie took a moment's pause to think of what to actually say so that Harley could finally catch up before moving forward. Imagine waking up one morning, not knowing who you were. Imagine standing up to look at yourself in the mirror, only to find an unfamiliar face. The patient said as her voice seemed to indicate that she was in a trance of sorts. Imagine trying to tell someone else your name, only to find that you can't seem to place it at all. Only to find that you can't remember even a hint about it. Harley then heard some clinging sounds against the bars and glass barrier of her cell before hearing Magpie speak out again. Then as the panic overtakes you, you begin to question everything. Who am I? What am I? Where and when was I born? Where do I live? Her voice started to quiver soon after. Who are your parents? Are you married? In a relationship? Do you have children or siblings? Are you an only child or the only person you consider yourself as family? As this went on, Harley couldn't help but feel her eyes start to water when hearing all of this. It truly felt heartbreaking to truly hear from someone that has a case of amnesia to actually say their feelings about this out loud. It was honestly the first time listening to such a thing, and it made her want to know more.
Then you ask the most important question of all. Which is, /which is? Vanitas and Harley asked/thought at the same time on wanting to know Magpie's final thought. You stand there with tears in your eyes and you ask yourself. She whispered out like she seemed to be truly haunted by an unfamiliar specter of her past. What have I done to deserve this? Flashback end. After being in that unofficial session, Harley had gone out there and talked to Vanitas and tell him to stop, only to see that he was gone. She had returned to her office and debated with herself on what to do exactly with what she heard moments ago. It went to the point that she wanted to throw away the pages of notes she had put down, but she couldn't do that at all. When it was time for her next session with Magpie, she tried to get through to her like in the past sessions to ask on what she could do to help her out. Nothing was successful at first until a stray thought passed through her mind. She didn't want to say it with it possibly making things worse, but it ended up coming out. The blonde intern told the patient that Vanitas was in the other room, listening as they spoke. When hearing that, Magpie perked up and seemed to be happy all of a sudden. It seemed disturbing at best on how she changed at a flip of a switch and seemed to be more compliant. From there, Harley ended up asking the same question to what Vanitas had asked Magpie and it came out with the same results. As the follow-up sessions had gone, she ended up using the same tactic of saying that Vanitas was in the other room and it felt wrong every time Harley said it to the woman. She didn't like being manipulated and in turn Harley didn't like to manipulate others. But it was the only way she could get results from her patient. So, until further notice, she had to swallow her pride a bit and try to pull through. Up till now, she had gained more information that she could really get prior to using that dirty tactic. The intern ended up to the conclusion that Magpie truly adopted things similar to that of a bird, aside from her attire she likes to wear underneath her shredded-up straitjacket. The claustrophobia discussed prior with her fear of small cells would bring up why she tends to think of herself as a damaged bird. She just wants to be free to do as she pleased. It was even then that she heard about the supposed nightmares of being back at Blackgate. It was hard to make out, but the intern was able to piece it to the best of her ability. Magpie ended up remembering small fragments of her time being experimented on by Braxton and Ravencroft. It could have been considered a miracle that she remembered anything prior to her memory loss, if you didn't consider the torture sessions. Even towards the end of the latest session with the nightmare discussions, Harley was able to learn that Braxton and Ravencroft were actually taking orders from someone else to conduct further experiments that wasn't what they originally planned on the whole mind control aspect of removing the bad from the person. There wasn't anything else after that and Magpie couldn't remember anything else from the nightmares. What most doctors would do to get their desired results. Harley bitterly said as that painful feeling came back towards the pit of her stomach. Sigh, I wish I could tell someone about this, but I don't know if anyone would believe it. Harley did indeed want to tell someone about it, but there was no proper way to tell them from what came to mind. Sure, she could try to contact Batman, but there was no way to do so. Even on the past several days when Vanitas came on by for his late-night chats with Magpie, she couldn't be able to go out there and try to tell him. She felt vulnerable and undefended by all of this. Glancing towards her clock, she realized that it was time to finally go home and try to sleep this off. She got up and started to pack up her things before heading out of the door to lock it up for the evening. The moment she walked past the service desk, she saw Naruto rush past her in a hurried pace like a man on a mission. What's wrong with him? The blonde intern thought as her curiosity drove her into following him. The trail eventually leads towards the women's wing, right in front of Pam's cell. What's going on? She internally asked as she ended up hiding yet again. It's going to be an odd habit for her from what she could tell by this. Pam. Naruto said in a loud tone. Pam, please talk to me. Naruto? What's wrong? Pamela groggily asked as she got up from her bed. Is it true? What's true? What's true? Pamela and Harley asked on what Naruto was referring. There was an incident earlier this evening that Selena got hurt in the process.
Before you ask, yes, she's fine and she's resting at the hospital right now, but that's not important at the moment.
What is important? Important is what she told me in fear that I wouldn't know the truth.
This gave Pam pause to process this slight moment.
Sigh, so you know. Then please Pam. Tell me why you didn't tell me before?
Pleaded the publisher.
Because we didn't want you to feel hurt, beloved.
Ivy said with a downcast look.
I would have handled it if you told me sooner. Naruto argued with pain evident in his voice. I thought you trusted me. But we do.
They said to him with tears welling up in their eyes.
Then why didn't you tell me?
Because we can't bear you a child. They said to him before they started to cry in the process. Nothing was said after that, and from her hiding place, Harley was in shock when hearing this and wondered how this could have happened. From what she was told by the medical doctor, Pam was in good health and nothing was wrong with her.
Did she leave this part out of the medical examination? Did Pam ask her to not reveal this to anyone else? She needed to know.
She has to know more about this. The blonde intern was about to get out of her hiding place to demand the answers, but Pam spoke up. It was several weeks after we were admitted here when we first noticed something odd about us, that we missed our period. We wondered what was going on, so we went to the regular medical doctor here to do a more extensive examination. She complied and did a full examination without our power dampeners on to get better results. She tested the blood work, did a pelvic examination, everything to check to fully see if we were a healthy woman. The majority of things turned out fine, that we were truly a healthy woman, but after that she gave us the bad news. Before telling us this, she asked on how we became this way and explained what occurred prior and during our transformation. After that, she brought up and compared our medical sheets prior to coming here, made her come to the conclusion that whatever happened that made us this way ruined our reproductive organs.
Mostly with the toxins within our bloodstream would practically kill off any possible chance we would get into bearing.
Not to mention that we are basically more of a plant than human now, and it would be truly hard for a US to create a child through a traditional manner. Pamela said, as her voice seemed like it was breaking as she got further into her conversation. Harley took a peek from her hiding spot to see Naruto placing his hands on the glass barrier with him wanting to hold her in his arms. We dreamed of having a family of our own with you, Naruto. Dreaming of carrying our child for all 9 months, through the good and bad experiences of being pregnant. Being able to hold on to your child for the very first time. To see them grow up throughout the years. To see them find love and have our ways to find enjoyment in teasing them. All of that we dreamed of truly experiencing. Something we would truly kill for. Pam said as she started to choke on her words. Those words made Harley think of the same thing, that it would truly be horrible for even her to lose the chance in experiencing those priceless moments. But that bastard took it from us that night. Woodrue might be dead, but he was successful in stealing the one thing that we truly wanted more than just that serum. He took away our chance in having your children. They yelled out as they bawled their eyes out. Nothing was said after that as the sounds of her crying filled the quieted wing of the asylum. Pam, you know that no matter what, I would still love you. I didn't care of what you have become and what your past was truly like, because I would still love you. Naruto told her, that made the botanist look towards him with her reddened eyes. So, what if you can't bear me a child, Pam? We could always adopt a child and love him or her like one of our own. Did you think that I would be so shallow that I would stop loving you because of that? And no, we didn't. We wouldn't even think dash. Then was that the other reason why you wanted me to seek out other women? So that they could be lucky into having my children? He asked, causing Harley to gasp out in shock from her hiding place. This ended up blowing up her cover, getting Naruto and Pam to look towards her direction. Who's there? I might as well show myself now. Harley thought before moving out from her hiding place. Harley? Naruto asked out in surprise as he saw his friend and doctor to his girlfriend. Even Pam was surprised at her appearance.
How long have you been listening? Gulp. F from the beginning.
The intern stuttered out.
Please don't hate me.
I didn't mean to listen in, but you rushed past me earlier and I wanted to know what was going on. Harley, I didn't mean to let you hear this.
I don't even hate you at all.
I was just so consumed of wanting the answers that I ended up getting you to follow.
So, I forgive you on that. Even we forgive you, Harley.
You have been so good and kind to us and we didn't want to push you away if you ended up hearing this. Ivy stated his mental ideas on what she and Pamela had planned out for Harley to possibly join their group were starting to shatter.
Things have possibly been ruined with their doctor hearing this, even the last bit. But is it true on what you said, Naruto? That Pam wants you to be with other women?
Harley asked as her mind was reeling over the new information. It seemed a bit much for her to handle.
He wanted to look away with shame on his face, but he couldn't look away from her blue eyes that held so much innocence in it that it would be wrong for him to lie to her. Somewhat from her perspective. Then what about you?
They want me to be with other women that I actually love and care for, Harley.
And I agree.
I don't want to be with women that I won't truly form a connection with. I wanted to deny such a thing about this, but they pointed out that Selena actually loves me and that I love her just as much. Harley's mind started to process this and it seemed so confusing for her to work out and if this was a lie at all, but Naruto was telling the truth to her.
I see. But is there anything else?
Gulp.
There is one thing?
Which is?
Pam has the impression
that you have feelings for me, and vice versa. And just like that, things seemed to go sideways for the blonde intern as her mind overloaded and had shut down on the process. Without any warning, she fainted on the spot. If one would see her face right now, it seemed to take on a slightly redder tone with her eyes being replaced by swirls and steam coming out of her ears and mouth.
Harley.
Harley.
Unknown location.
So, it seems you have failed to get either Simon Feck or the Zephyr. Shiva said after being debriefed by her subordinate on the mission. From what could be seen from the assassin's appearance was his arm being heavily bandaged because of the scars and burns from the exploding battery. One would have also seen the bandages on his face of the same injuries if it wasn't covered up by one of the man's spare masks he had at the base.
Forgive me on this, Lady Shiva. I won't let you down again.
Silver Monkey said to the woman in the shadows. I'll make another chance in retrieving the teen scientist. There is no need to do so anymore, Alfred.
We already have gotten what we needed.
Pardon me, my lady, but I don't understand what you're talking about.
I might as well tell you since you had thrown things off for Batman and this Vanitas fellow. Shiva said, getting a confused look from behind the monkey mask. We had figured that things wouldn't be successful in the end as we hoped.
So, I had ordered some of the men you brought with for the mission to raid Simon Feck's lab. They were able to locate all of the research notes pertaining to the Zephyr project before destroying the lab like planned for cover. So now we will study them and make our own Zephyr batteries to our heart's content.
I see.
Silver Monkey said as he tightened his fists in anger that he wasn't informed of this part of the mission.
You may go now, Alfred.
Rest up until I or Roz call for you. She told him, making him bow in the process.
By your leave, Lady Shiva.
The assassin said as he walked out of the darkened room. As he was walking towards his quarters for the evening, he was practically seething behind his mask on his humiliating defeat by the likes of Batman and Vanitas. Not only that, but he was left out of part of the plan on getting the Zephyr notes from the lab. Don't get him wrong, as he understood the idea, but it infuriated him that he wasn't in the loop about this. When he went past a certain part of the complex, 2 columns of 4 glowing green eyes, 8 in total, lit up as they watched Silver Monkey give out so much hate.
Chuckles, seems I might have found someone of use here after all.
The person muttered before the eyes went out like a candle, to add the monkey-themed assassin into his plans.
That's it for this reading.
Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction.
Looking forward to having you on board again.